Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Deku had a wielding pup Quirk part 1. If you guys enjoy this what if and want to see part 2, comment down below and let me know before I start. Please do support for more awesome content and leave a like, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel and also share this video with your friends and check out the description in my playlist. The author of the story, TheAnimeStar from AO3. So let's start the video. So, you're sure this is safe then, 𝗵𝗃𝗃 nervously asked our green-haired hero. Absolutely. I don't doubt any of my babies, 𝗳𝗧𝗍, was the reply that our eccentric pink-haired support hero gave. Across the room stood 𝗍𝗂, Eraserhead, Powerloader, and All Might watching on in interest, if not bit nervous. After all, this was just an experimental test, and due to 𝗵𝗃𝗃 track record of devices exploding after a single use, it was not strong to see why the apprehension was there. It also did not help that there was entire area in back corner dedicated to a pile of smoldering prototype gadgets from 𝗧𝗏𝗏. Are you sure about this, Principal 𝗍𝗂? You won't even tell me why you want this done, 𝗳𝗏𝗧𝗟 said. Now don't go doubting me now. This just something that needs to be done, he replied, and followed with, after all this could help with stopping him from breaking his bones during training. He finished. 𝗳𝗏𝗧𝗟 grunted and narrowed his eyes, seemingly satisfied with answer, even if it was begrudgingly. After all, if Midoriya can get a way to improve himself without needing to break something every time he tried to increase his maximum, it would surely help all those involved. As we look at the machine our little green friend was hooked up to, he was sitting in what could be described as a dentist chair with straps around his arms to protect him and everyone else if his power were to surge. Upon his head was bowl-like helmet with straps under his chin. If anything, it looked more like he was set to be executed than to be tested. Wires coiled up and into another tube-like machine were another helmet set on a mannequin, which in turn had cables running from it into several server-looking machines and a computer. He had several electrodes places around arms, legs, chest, back, and neck to help with monitoring normal bodily functions. At first, 𝗵𝗃𝗃 had built the computer to be able to read someone's mind or to try and read an animal's mind without the use of a quirk. When she tried it on some test rats, it pretty much just read brainwaves and an accurate pain tolerance. Powerloader thought the device could be useful or other things and talked to Principal 𝗍𝗂 about it, which led him to see if maybe they could use it on Izuku Midoriya to help him control the levels of one for all. When discussing it with All Might, he decided it couldn't really hurt, since be nice to know exactly what happening when he reached percentage of his quirk usage. Welp, we're pretty much all set up. All we need to do and press button and you can start using your quirk, and this baby will do the rest. 𝗵𝗃𝗃 gave big smile, a bit crazed, and a thumbs up with one hand slapping the top of one of the servers with the other. Izuku gulped. Alright, I'm ready, I think. He looked over towards the teachers. Should I start at 1% and work my way up, or should I use up to my maximum at the start? He questioned. We'll start with nothing first, and then we'll add a few pokes and pinches to you first to see how computer reacts to pain, and then from there we will then slowly add your quirk to see how your body is reacting, answered the bear mouse dog creature. Okay, I guess whenever you're ready, 𝗳𝗏𝗃𝗃, Izuku stuttered out. He just hopes it didn't explode or that it would be painful, but he trusted his fellow student mostly. Without a warning, 𝗵𝗃𝗃 slammed the button to start the machine. At once it started humming and you could see lights blinking around and the monitor showing several lines running horizontal across the screen. The read in order: brain activity, heart rate, pain stimulus, quirk usage percent, and lastly BLD pressure. The brain activity and heart rate and BLD pressure were above average, to no one's shock since he was nervous. The pain and quirk levels were bottomed out, and after 10 seconds of nothing happen, everyone seemed to let out a sigh of relief, except 𝗵𝗃𝗃, who seemed little off-put that no one completely trusted her newest baby. Okay then, I'm going to give you a small pinch and then a firm pinch to test the pain scale. Alright, Midoriya? 𝗳𝗏𝗧𝗟 said as he stepped close to one of Izuku's arms. Yes, I'm ready, sir. The greenette nodded. 𝗳𝗏𝗧𝗟 gave a small pinch to one of Izuku's arms, nothing painful or that would leave a mark, and they watched the pain levels jump a slight bit. He did a few more in rapid session and they watched as they lines seemed to hop in correspondence. He then gave a strong pinch as if a kid being pinched by a parent after getting caught being in trouble. Izuku winced a little bit and the line jumped much higher than the other times, but still considerably low on the scale. Well, you sure outdone yourself this time, 𝗵𝗃𝗃. Powerloader praised his student. She beamed a smile, giggling, and continued to monitor another screen that had information on power usage and computing jargon. While 𝗧𝗵𝗃 and May had no idea about the workings of One for All, they really didn't need to know, since if this worked for Midoriya, this could be a new step to have other people using this technology to help improve themselves without needing to constantly hurt themselves. Meanwhile, outside the building there was Puppy that had somehow managed to get through the security and was playing around in the yard. Due to it being summer, the doors to the support building was open to let fresh air through the hallways. The puppy, being curious, decided to snoop inside. It wanders the hallways trying to find anything of interest. It heard a sudden humming of noise coming from the other end of the hallways and made its way towards it. It stumbled upon a door that was slightly cracked open, and due its size it slipped in without even trying and was standing behind 3 men. It gazed curiously at scene before watch another man pinches a smaller kid in chair, and some pink-hair female sitting across from them. No one noticed the puppy in the room. They were all too busy focusing on the task at hand and watching the monitor. The dog saw the mannequin with the other helmet on it, and its curiosity got the better of it and went around the men to get a closer look. Okay, let's try 1% of your power, Midoriya, just in your arm for right now, 𝗧𝗵𝗃 instructed. Izuku nodded and closed his eyes and conjured up the feeling in just one of his arms. The rest looked and saw the line for Quirk spike to 1%, but none of the other lines spiking. Good, let's try 5%, 𝗧𝗵𝗃 continued. Without missing beat, Izuku put 5% into his arms, and again just Quirk percent went up. Okay, now let's try that 5% full cowling thing you do for whole body, 𝗧𝗵𝗃 said. Izuku took a breath and let the power seep through his whole body, green and red lines dancing across his skin, and the percentage stayed the same. Well, that's interesting. Even when going through whole body, it's not changing how much of your quirk is being used, nor how much you have to think about it, judging by how much your brain activity isn't changing, Nizu commented. Izuku responded, it might be because I'm used to being able to use 20% now, and going 5% doesn't add much what I'm already doing, and as for the quirk usage, I think it might have to do with regardless if I'm just using it in my arm or my whole body, it's like holding water in hose. He continued, if you hold the water in the hose and builds up in a spot, you're just making it have more pressure in the spot, so comes out harder and faster if you release the end, or if you let it flow back, it's the same amount of water just spread throughout more of the hose, he finished. Leave it to young Midoriya to come up with a convoluted way of thinking, but I suppose it does make sense. All Might incurred. Well, I suppose we should go to your max then and see what that does. 𝗧𝗵𝗃 pushed. Here goes nothing, Izuku breathed mostly to himself. As he went to 20% full cowling, the monitor showed spike in usage to 20%, and brain usage spiked more. The rest vitals increased slightly as well. The pain line was doing little bunny hops with random spike higher others. So right now 20% is where he can remain steady without having to push himself to get hurt. Although this doesn't show when he actually uses it, we can assume since he's able to maintain this with little pain doing basic attacks, and other things would cause minor or no damage to himself. Nizu concluded. Alright Midoriya, we're going to see what happens when you go beyond. If it starts to get too painful, stop, is that clear? 𝗧𝗵𝗃 glared at his troublemaking student. Izuku just nodded. Before I do though, are we going to try testing my new black WHP powers to see if that does anything? Izuku asked. Depending on this test we will see if you're still able to proceed on to that, or if we should another time, Nizu responded. Izuku nodded and powered to 25%. Immediately there was change. The quirk usages went to 25% but was flickering between 24 to 26% as if Izuku was having a strong time maintaining just 25% flat. All vitals began to increase rapidly, and pain scale was hopping up and down with each hop getting higher each time. His brain activity was going up and down as if parts of his brain were shutting down and restarting to compensate for focusing on the sudden surge. Stop, urged 𝗧𝗵𝗃, and Izuku let the power die out, and he was a little bit. He was not hurt, and although felt out of breath, it seemed more like he was just finishing up a workout. So how do you feel, Midoriya? 𝗧𝗵𝗃 asked after making sure the machine was still running a light. The machine was still perfect condition, and nothing was smoking, so that was good sign. Look, he breathed out. Just feel a little winded as if I just got down doing a workout or a running session, maybe bit stinging around my body, but that's about it, he responded. Well, at least that shows us something. You have to slowly increase your usage and then cut it out until your body gets used to spreading that much power throughout your body. 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗍𝗘. I would recommend every 5% running that power through your body for a few seconds and then stopping. That way eventually your body and mind will know what to expect when you use that percentage. It will be a long, grueling, and possible painful process, and trailed off. I am prepared to do anything to 𝗵𝗃 this, Izuku proudly announced. All Might smiled. He had definitely chosen correctly, although he didn't need this machine to tell him that. Well, since you're fine, I guess we can test that WHP of yours to see what it does to you. 𝗧𝗏 brought up. Well, might take me a minute to get it activated since it seems to respond more towards emotions than anything. Izuku responded. He closed his eyes and started to build up feelings he had before when brining out his black our little puppy friend. While all this was going on, had made itself over to the mannequin and had hopped on the chair to get closer to it. Normally someone should have noticed this dog off to the side, but because of the small incident with Izuku they sort of tunnel vision on him and the results. The puppy stood up on hind legs and leaned against the mannequin close to the helmet. When he did his way offset the dummy and it fell back against the chair and the helmet landed right on the dog's head. This of course set off alarms to the machine. 𝗵𝗃 was watching, but before she could stop Izuku, he burst his into reality. 𝗵𝗃-𝗧𝗏 All Might, Power Loader, Nizu, and 𝗧𝗏 responded immediately when May suddenly screamed out. But it was too late. Midoriya unleashed his WHP just as the helmet came down on the puppy and the machine started going haywire. Alarms started going off and red flashed all over the room. The machine began shaking violently and some smoke covered the room. Izuku was grunted and seemed to be holding in a scream as this was going on. The machine started to rip apart and a few panels exploded off the sides and top. Some of the control panels began melting from the internal heat coming from inside. Shut the DMN thing OFF, scream 𝗧𝗏. He wanted to rip the kid out of chair but couldn't see a DMN thing in the smoke. The rest of the teachers ran over to try and help, but being in same predicament couldn't risk breaking the machine more in case it causes a backlash. Young Midoriya, can you hear me? All Might was panicking. May, turn this thing off. Power Loader shouted, trying to calm down All Might. Already on it, sir. May shouted. May, having her special goggles on, was able to find emergency SWH amongst the smoke and flicked it, and the machine hummed down and then found her way to the SWH on the wall, which allowed a ventilator to SEK smoke out to the roof. Normally there would have been a sprinkler system to go off, but with the amount of fires May causes it started to affect other people's works, so they had turned it off. After few moments it was quiet with only the sound of ventilator humming above them. Then heard, but not like hurt, but like a dog after running around after an energy spike it had. As smoke cleared out there sat Izuku still in the chair strapped down. Happily with tongue out, looking around curiously. Izuku, are you okay? 𝗧𝗏 slowly asked. Izuku started at him, tilted his head and yipped. The boy yipped. What? Everyone in the room sort of glanced at each other, not sure what to say. This machine completely fried his brain. The thoughts running through the teachers' and principals' heads, panicking. With All Might it was, oh my god, young Midoriya, life is over. What am I going to tell his mother? Sorry I turned your son into almost brain-dead puppy, and what of one for all? Oh no. He was taking it well. With Nizu, oh I can see the headlines now. He does it again with putting students in danger, this time on their own terms. This does not bode well for any of us. For now, we have to silence any of this and somehow cover up Midoriya's soon-to-belong absence. Already scheming something. With Power Loader, he was more worried about what would happen to him and May, since this was their fault for putting him in the machine, saying it was safe. With 𝗧𝗏, you have got to be kidding. The kid now has the intelligence of a puppy. It's always something with this kid. Okay, calm down, this is not the time. We need to figure out what to do, and quick. He started to think of something to do while pros were off to the side freaking out a bit, not paying attention to anything around them. A very confused puppy was laying on the ground and beginning to stir. His eyes fluttered open. What happened? I remembered I was trying use my and suddenly I blacked out. Why do I feel 𝗧𝗏? At this moment he stood up and looked out and saw a snout where nose should be, and looked down to see he had shrunk and was awfully close to the floor even though he was standing. He also saw he had paws, ridiculously cute paws. I turned into a dog. What? I don't understand what is happening right now. While he was freaking out amongst his dilemma, and May had seen the dog and saw it looking around and looking very confused and yipping softly. Her very nature of being female made her want to pick it up and hold it. 𝗬𝗲𝗵𝗃 May exclaimed. The teachers all turned to look at her, ready to berate her over this serious situation, when they noticed her holding a strange-looking puppy in her arms, trying to assumingly hug it to death. The thing is, it was clearly trying to push away from her and was whimpering. The dog was like a husky/lab mix, only with dark green with black highlights around the outer parts of the fur. The fur itself was shaggy around medium-length fur, but it blended so well with its skin it just looked like a solid color blanketed him. He had green eyes that almost seemed emerald and glowed, and a strange-looking tail that was ethereal as it waved behind him. The end of it fanned out into 5 thin appendages of fur that seemed almost like small spikes, only soft. It looked nervous and whimpering sound like stuttering, like it did not know where to touch to keep away from the well-endowed student while she its face and cuddled it. "Where did you get that?" Power Loader shouted at May. "Oh, he was under the second helmet in the chair. When you all ran over to Izuku, I noticed it trying to stand up, and so I went over to check on him. Once I saw him look at me, I couldn't help it, just looks so cute." She ended while rubbing her face against the dog's, who seems to just give up and accept its fate at this point. "I wonder," 𝗵𝗃 spoke as he stepped closer to May and the puppy. "May I see the dog, Miss 𝗵𝗃𝗃?" the principal asked. She handed him over and 𝗵𝗃 held him arm's length away, although being how small he was not far. "If you can understand me, nod your head," 𝗵𝗃 asked, and the puppy slowly nodded his head up and down. Everyone stopped what they were thinking and watched, because they knew if the next question was answered like they thought, there was going to be some awkward situations they were about to have to power through. "Are you Izuku Midoriya?" 𝗵𝗃 calmly asked. The puppy looked up with what looked like tears about to pour out of its eyes, nodded, with a small yip. Panic, that is what everyone but 𝗵𝗃 and May thought when their answers were confirmed. How were they supposed to deal with the fact that somehow they the minds of a puppy and one of their students? And for a couple of them, that student was in control of an immensely powerful quirk that they could not even control. Suddenly the puppy in Izuku's body started yipping, probably uncomfortable being strapped in a chair. But for now, that is where it's going to stay until they figured out what to do with him. Oh, so that's why he was freaking out. May, her fist like she just had an eureka moment. She bent down and picked Izuku up out of 𝗵𝗃's hands again and looked at Izuku. "No wonder you trying to run from me, my bad. But you are just really cute like that, you know." May smiled at him. Midoriya just sort of let out a small whine, which everyone assumed was embarrassment. "Please kill me 𝗧-" as Midoriya was thinking, a sudden instinct kicked into him and her face. Everyone just stopped for a second for what just occurred, the nervous tick of a boy, just a girl face. Although he was puppy and looked normal to anyone holding a puppy, this was no normal pup anymore. Izuku, on the other hand, was freaking out and started yipping and barking as if he would be normally talking and freaking out. "Why on earth did I do that? I didn't even think about doing that. Oh God, just kill me now, put this old dog to rest already." But to his surprise, May just giggled and rubbed her nose on his. "I see now you are much braver when you're a 𝗵𝗃𝗃," she said with bit gentle voice. "Actually," intruded 𝗵𝗃, "I think I know what's happening to him, although it's just a theory." May had now shifted Izuku, so he was more laying against her bosom and arms, facing the principal. When he had activated his WHP, this pup and his mind crossed over. Although I'm not sure on the specifics, it seems because of the quirk something affected the change to give it Midoriya's color scheme to say. He continued. "While he probably cannot talk, he still has cognitive thinking, but also probably kept the animal instincts of the pup. So, when you apologized to him, while he was probably just trying to say it wasn't a problem, and dog's idea of showing that is to of course lick to show gratitude or affection." Izuku nodded his head. "That sounds plausible. Then I wonder if I have better smell and hearing, since in a 𝗬𝗧, while he started muttering in his mind, he did not notice was slightly also yipping under his breath. And he brought his tail, which should have been too short to reach his chin, and seemed to stretch or extend to it. The 5 thin appendages seemed to form a hand under his jaw, places as they would be like when he normally goes on his muttering tirades. If anyone had any doubts it was Izuku, they threw them out the window as they all knew this as a classic Midoriya move. They all sort of chuckled amongst themselves and then sighed exasperated. After all, what are they to do now? They turned to the now puppy-minded Midoriya, wonder how to deal with it since, well, they could not just let it to roam, who knows what havoc it would reap. So, we're just going to ignore how our green friend's tail is suddenly almost Quirk-like? 𝗵𝗃 asked. Oh, I know. May jumped, throwing Izuku out of his thoughts as he felt his cushions jiggle. But for some reason he was not as embarrassed as he would be, maybe because dogs do not have as much embarrassment towards bodies or females. He turned his head to 𝗵𝗃 as she continued. He was trying that WHP thing when this all went down, so perhaps that was permanently put on him, and since a dog tail closes thing to WHP like it's like an arm and hand that he can use, she exclaimed. Well, I suppose young 𝗵𝗃, that bout good guess as any, but for now let's keep this a secret that any of this happened other than some of the teachers. We'll have to make up a cover story for young Midoriya's absence for the time being. All Might said. Well, I'll make up some documents stating he's off on a lengthy mission with some pros who asked to help train him on his quirk and get some real experience with time-consuming missions. 𝗧𝗵𝗃 continued, we will say that it was sudden and because of the undercoverings and distance of the mission he was made to leave ASAP with no contacts and well show proof that we have his phone. He finished. 𝗧𝗏 grunted, about as good as it was going to get. His quick plan. A few holes, but for a start it would satisfy anyone in class, and such as to why he went missing. They could get some other details added later if needed. So, I know this will sound crude, but we'll probably need to put the boy Mud in some kind of confinement or under a coma until we figure this out, he explained. After all, we don't know if he could set off that stupid power of his accidentally, and if that body dies. He voice stopped. He did not have to finish that sentence. They all knew if that body died, any hope of getting Izuku back in his body would go with it. Well, what about Midoriya then? 𝗵𝗃 soft spoke as she tightens her grip around him. Are you going to confine him as well? She looked up at the teachers worriedly. No, that won't be necessary. 𝗧𝗍 voice startled everyone. Instead, we'll have the students take care of him. His smile on his face seemed to be amused. What? Izuku thought, trying process what he just heard his principal said. Okay, you rat, what the hell are you saying? 𝗧𝗏 seemed to be twitching at this absurd statement. You want to just put this top secret right into the very hands we're trying to avoid? He was almost shouting at this point. Listen now, we certainly can't just have teachers watch him, we still need to do classes, and plus at least like this Izuku will still be undercover watch while also perhaps learning a few things only a dog can. After all, normally the Midoriya we know would be spazzing all over the place if he was being held as close as he is with Miss 𝗵𝗃 right now. He ended, pointing at the pair. They both looked at each other and May smiled and Izuku slowly opened his eyes as if he just remembers the situation, about to freak out when the weird feeling of his dog instincts kicked in and stopped and just lightly yipped. See? 𝗧𝗍 confirmed, we'll let 𝗵𝗃 and 𝗵𝗃 fix this machine up, and in the meantime, you, pointing at Izuku, will use this as an opportunity to get to know your classmates a little more and to gain some confidence. After all, you plan to be the #1 hero after all, Might, right? Izuku nodded. Then you can perhaps learn to stop fidgeting under pressure and around other females. Use this as a chance to say, get to know your classmates a little better. There is no other time like this to get a backseat view of their quirks you are always writing about. We'll come with something later for exact details of how to handle you but manage to still have you in classes and such so you can still keep with the work. He finished. 𝗧𝗏 took this chance to clarify the what is going to happen. For right now us adults are going to take him, point towards the restrained boy, to Midnight and Recovery Girl and explain the situation and gather the teachers to let them in on this mess. We'll put him in a coma for time being. For now, Miss 𝗵𝗃, you can hang around with the troublemaker and clean this place up a bit and see if you can salvage any of the recorded info so we can try and reverse this nonsense. 𝗧𝗏 breathed heavily at the end of his tirade. He was too old for this stuff. The teachers grabbed the human part of Midoriya and 𝗵𝗃 strapped him down while 𝗧𝗏 and All Might went ahead to scout and get rid of prying eyes while they transported him to a safer location to put it under an induced coma until further notice. They all left the room, leaving both the students to stay in silence for few seconds until May put Izuku on the ground. He spun around and sat down looking up at May. Well, I suppose I should start picking up some of the mess, May sighed. 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏 softly barked, which seemed to be happy one at that, and walked to some debris and picked it up with his tail and looked over at 𝗵𝗃 expectantly. Oh, well, if you think you can help then great. Now I only have to do half of the work. She beamed. 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏's sweat dropped at that. Of course, that's her first thought. 𝗧𝗂𝗧 stared at her, then let a little yip while waving the piece of metal in his tail. I guess we'll start by putting the pieces we pick up over there in that corner. She pointed. 𝗧𝗂𝗧 tossed the piece in that direction and continued to find what small piece he could handle. Be careful of anything too hot. You already turned into a dog, wouldn't want you to be a hot dog, haha. 𝗵𝗃 started laughing at her own lame joke. 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏 just sort of glared. Oh man, I hope this doesn't take long to reverse. I'm supposed to go to Endeavor's place to train with 𝗂𝗁 and 𝗳𝗏𝗧𝗪. 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏 contemplated to himself. He dug around for a bit, picking up small piece and tossing them to the corner. After about 20 minutes or so there was a nice pile built up and most of big stuff was out of the way. It has been bit quiet, which is strange considering how loud 𝗵𝗃 is. Speaking of which, I wonder 𝗳𝗿𝗧𝗟𝗑 looked over to see 𝗵𝗃 on her knees just staring down on something not moving, beside a bit of quivering. He went over to her and looked at what she had in her hands. It was the monitor to show his vitals. It looked cracked and was still on but no longer functioning properly. The screen was still on, however frozen. He glanced down at it. The only thing readable because of the cracks was the pain scale. It was maxed out. The line went from low to quick, almost vertically jumped to the top of the scale, and it never came back down, showing that it was up high for several seconds before the machine broke down and it got stuck there. 𝗵𝗃 had been picking up anything hot and putting in pile since she had protective equipment on. After lifting a rather heavy piece off to the side, she noticed some shattered glass and saw the monitor with screen still somehow lit up. She knelt to pick it up and move it when she caught the only readable thing on the screen. She stayed knelt and was in shock. She did not even think about this while everything was going on. He was going through so much pain that whole time I was just hoping the machine wouldn't explode and I wouldn't get in trouble, and he was in so much pain. Her grip on the device tightened and she started quivering. She could feel the hot liquid ready to pour from her eyes. 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏 looked from the monitor to 𝗵𝗃's face and he could tell she was struggling with something. He was about to put his paw on her hand after he could see the tears struggling to stay in. Before he could though, 𝗵𝗃 let out a hushed sob and then angrily threw the monitor towards the machine. It clanged against the metal, echoing through the lab. It crashed to the floor, glass shattering around it and the lights finally dying out from the screen. 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏 backed up, startled, looking at the now even more broken machine, then back to 𝗵𝗃, whose tears were now freely falling from her red puffed eyes down her flushed face, was breathing heavily. How can I call myself a support hero when I can only hurt people?" she cried out softly. "All I ever wanted was to invent people and help, but everything blows up in my face, literally everything." She was screamingly hoarsely now, not to 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏 but to herself. 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏 went up to her and placed his paw on her thigh, and she looked down at him, and for the first time in her life she felt angry at herself for thinking she could achieve anything. She pushed 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏 away from her, shouting, "Get away from me, I'm nothing but a failure. If you get close to me you will only get hurt worse." She stood up and started backing away from him. "Look at me, haha, just look at this place, on fire, broken, just like everything I make. I even have my own corner of reminders of the failure I am." She had glanced over at the labeled "Work in Progress" sign that hung in the corner. "I should have listened to them," she spoke under her breath. If it weren't for his now enhanced hearing, 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏 would have missed it. He barked at her and she looked up at him. "Go away, Midoriya, I know you have to hate me now. I turned you into a dog," and tears welling up in her eyes again, she was hugging herself and backed herself up against a desk. "I hurt you so much." Wailing, she covered her face in her hands. What could he do for her though? If he were still a person, he could just say what he wanted, and try to comfort her. He has no way of telling her that it was that painful as the machine said it. Wash felt pain, yes, but it was like being punched by 𝗂𝗁, so it was pretty painful, but it wasn't unbearable pain by any means, and he doesn't even really remember it. He started yipping, trying to make himself sound sympathetic and not angry, barking. She just stiffened at the sound and turned to face away from him. "I can't be anything here anymore. I'll just go to normal high school and live out my life as car mechanic or something." She sighed. "You can't be a support hero, 𝗵𝗃. The maybe's they used to say to me, you know. The maybe came from most of my stuff either not working or exploded, so it was always, maybe they won't explode this time." She stopped and glanced at the machine. How am I going to make this up to you, Midoriya? Sure, I'll work on this with Power Loader and get you back to normal, but after this I doubt you'll even glance at me, let alone want my help. She was sniveling again. What did she mean by that? Does she actually think I think so low of her? After all the times I went to her for help. Izuku questioned. Slowly he felt heat rising to his head. Why was this making him so angry? What did I ever think I could achieve on my own? Weak, powerless, useless little Mei and her Zoom quirk and subpart intelligence. What could I ever actually achieve with just strong work? You need talent and an useful quirk to achieve anything. I ignored them all back then, thinking that I'd show all one day I'll be supporting a top Hirono, the top hero, with just my guts and willingness to drive forward. So 𝗬𝗧𝗵𝗲 started to speak softer with each word, and before she could finish, she was interrupted by a very loud and very angry sound bark. Izuku was barking out, but internally he was screaming, and now he knew why. The self-loathing, the 𝗬𝗵𝗃𝗲 low self-worth she gave herself. It was him, I was how her viewed himself most of his life. The thing that set him off though. The word that he hated most in the world, the one that defined him for so long. Useless. Until 𝗬𝗧𝗪𝗃𝗃 changed that meaning of Deku to mean something. It haunted him. It followed him everywhere. No quirk, no anything, yet he still pushed forward even when that word was in the corner of his mind and eyes wherever he looked or thought. Looming behind him when he was alone, all around him in school or in public. But 𝗵𝗃, she had something, she had a quirk, she had the smarts, she had the drive. She had a goal. Still she had to something, yet people still called her useless. He thought to himself, you are not useless. I've lived my life being useless, but because I kept going forward, I've become what I've always wanted. If someone like me could be a hero, someone who was quirkless, then someone as amazing as you 𝗵𝗃𝗃 could never be useless. I've seen your devices and I've used them. They have saved me and others so many times. While he was screaming this in his mind, it only came out as angry barking, but it seemed Mei was taking like he was confirming her thoughts. I know already, she screamed at him, making him flinch back in shock. She was shaking out of anger and nervousness, two things 𝗵𝗃𝗃 never were. I know I'm a screw-up, I've always known. Even my first invention I made when I was younger that got me into wanting to build things was a failure. Her voice was getting hoarse and waving, the tears seemed to be never ending, and her hair was becoming unhinged. My first thing I ever built. She started remembering her childhood while softly sobbing to Izuku. What you got there, kiddo? And young man leaned over a young 8-year-old Mei. She held up an empty soda bottle with some plastic wings attached and few awkward wirings attached to it, and liquid and some Mentos candies in a chamber. Watch this, Daddy. The little Mei pressed a button and the Mentos dropped in the liquid, and it began bubbling up and launched a couple of feet before it exploded and covered both on them in sticky contents. They both stared for a second, and Mei began to tear up and her lips quivered. Well, how about that? My little Mei is already taking after her parents. Haha. Don't get downhearted, kiddo, we all start somewhere. He hugged Mei and she smiled and hugged him back. You'd think that'd be a happy memory to have, but I haven't moved. It's been years and I haven't improved at all. She turned around to the desk she was against. It had clutter of blueprints and few unfinished small devices. She in one angry swoop threw them to the side, clattering against the floor. It's not possible for me not after this. This proves I could never save anyone with my growl. Mei was confused. Midoriya was just straight up growling at her now. At first, she thought it was because he was affirming his angriness towards her. However, he pointed at her with his tail and then at himself while barking. You've saved me, and with that allowed Eri to smile. So you 𝗵𝗃𝗃 saved Eri, I told you before. He wanted so bad to remind her. You don't need to be angry and tell me what I already know about 𝗵𝗃𝗃. Mei was confused for a couple reasons. One, apparently Midoriya's tail could stretch at least 6 feet to be able to slap her from where he was. 2, he slapped her, but why was he that mad at her? Well, she deserved it, but then she felt the tail rubbing the cheek he had hit, and his eyes gave a shocked look like he didn't know what came over him. Oh God, I slapped her out of sheer frustration of not being able to communicate to her. There's gotta be a way to tell her. He looked around and saw the pile of Mei's experiments and notices something towards the bottom of the pile. 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏 stopped and ran towards the WIP pile and dug something out and threw in front of May, and then sat down in front of it and nudged it towards her. She bent down and picked it up. What she held in her hand was an object that 𝗧𝗂𝗧 had requested off-handedly when she found him in the woods. It was the prototype of the gloves she had made him before the festival. She did not sleep a wink until she finished these. They were something she was proud of, and Midoriya seemed so happy about them, and she remembered the conversation she had with him after the festival was over and she got enough rest. How could she forget this? A couple days after the festival, 𝗳𝗏𝗃𝗁𝗍𝗍 peeked into the support class. Some of the students looked at him and then pointed to back. "Hey there, moneymaker," she gleamed. "I just wanted to thank you for those gloves. They really helped me out in a situation I got in later that day," he managed without stuttering. "Is that right? Well, I'm sure glad you like my babies. Do you need something else? I'll gladly make anything for you as long you get out there and show him of 𝗵𝗃𝗃. She was always looking for ways to advertise her things. "I'm sure I'll think of something. I always enjoy the things you make me. It makes me feel like I'm safe when I wear them, and if I feel safe, then the people I save will be safe too. You know, 𝗵𝗃𝗃, if you think about it, since you are the one adjusting and fixing up my costume and giving me support gear. Using this to save people means you there too, saving people with your inventions." He gave such an innocent smile to her that day. "Well, that's nice of to say, my little advert, but I just like making my babies." She was actually very much appreciative of him say that. It felt like she was achieving something now. "I mean it, you're saving everyone one gadget at a time, and with it being you, since you're really amazing, I'll always trust anything you make." He gave her a thumbs up. Everyone in the room just froze and looked at the kid like he was a madman. May frozen for an entirely different reason. "You know that little girl Miro and me have been with for bit showing around the school." 𝗧𝗂𝗧 started. She gave a little nod. She remembers her, the little horned kid stuck to those two like glue. She had a sad look all the time. "We saved her on that mission, and apparently she was abused and alone for so long she had forgotten how to smile. She tried, but it never came out right." He continued. "I got into a bit of fight is all I'll say, and almost didn't make it back to the festival in time for our performance. I had promised her I'd be there, and I almost broke it because of some jerk, but cause of you and giving me the gloves that day, I was able to use a move that would have most defiantly put me out of commission. I wouldn't have been able to go back to festival. I did though. I made it back and finished the performance, and you know what, 𝗵𝗃𝗃?" He stared at her. "What?" she hesitant to ask. She finally smiled. 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏 looked at her big smile of his own with tears poking out of his eyes ready to fall at any moment. Present time, she held the gloves in her hands and slowly brought them to her chest, lightly sobbing as tears which before were from anger and sadness were now trickles of happiness. How could she forget those words of encouragement? All those years of naysayers vanished, and she hadn't thought of them since. Then this machine and dog fiasco, they all came back like a truck, proving them all right. She had new proof now. Midoriya and that little girl Eri, they were all the proof she needed to keep going. For so long I've wanted to hear those words," she spoke calmly. 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏 tilted his head confused, letting out a small whine while he did so. She chuckled at the sight that someone believed in my stuff and would always trust it to help them. I spent so long trying to make so many flashy things to prove everyone I could do anything, and always went too far. Then you came along, money. No, 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏. She got down on her knees and opened her arms for him to come to her. He questions why she was using his name, but he didn't mind, and he walked to her and places his paws on her legs and using his tail started wiping her tears from her face. She brought her arms around him and held him to her chest, still holding on to the gloves in her fist. "You came along that fateful day in the festival and allowed me to show off my babies, then got me into the finals. Then you kept coming back and coming back. Finally, you said the words I have been longing for anyone to say to me. That you'd trust me with your support gear, that in other words you'd trust me with your life." She was still hugging him and sniffling softly into his fur. 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏 took his tail and patted the 𝗵𝗃𝗃's head and then put his tail around her, should upon her back as if he were hugging her. "That little girl, even after you told me it just now, really occurred to me just what I could do without ever knowing it. If you had never told me, I would have gone on thinking you just like the gloves and glad to help your training. I never actually thought I'd be part of 𝗵𝗃𝗃." Her voice was breaking, but she took a deep breath and finished. I never thought that I'd be part of being the hero. She smiled down at Izuku. Izuku then pointed to the machine, the not him, and let out a small yip. Huh, I guess when I really think about it, is pretty incredible I managed to swap a dog and a human mind, isn't it? May seemed to be calming down with few hiccups and rubbing the tears off her face. I would never had thought that she would be holding all that in. She always so happy and energetic. Always moving on to next thing, never letting anything hold her down. I would never think that she would be like me. He nuzzled her and she looked up and he her cheek, this time meaning to. Guess the dog part is going to just be a thing now. I shouldn't be surprised now that I think about it. I mean, everyone got secrets and things they don't want the world to know. I know she'll fix this machine better than before and I'll be back to normal before I know it. He convinced himself. They both remained there before the emotional and mental exhaustion finally hit and they fell asleep. It would be a long summer. Outside the slightly cracked open door to the support lab stood 𝗵𝘃𝗧𝗏 and a small white creature. You are really rotten, you know that, you little rat, 𝗵𝘃𝗧𝗏 exasperated. Oh, whatever do you mean, Mr. Higuri? The principal asked to 𝗵𝘃𝗧𝗏. Earlier when you said you were going to have Midoriya stay with the students, this is what you really were after. That's why you even brought me with you to take that boy's body instead of helping them clean. 𝗵𝘃𝗧𝗏 explained. You really think I'm that cunning? Well, I am, hee. You and I both know that Miss Hatsune's little accidents and slip-ups were bogging her down, and it just so happened that the perfect little hero, in the perfect body, it's just what the recovery girl called for to help cheer her up. Nizu clarified. Yeah, that's the thing, you little weasel. There is no way a stray puppy just wanders into this school without the defense barriers detecting it, and that the only path once inside was straight to this room and right into the one blind spot we all had. This seems more like one of your convoluted plans of ridiculous proportions. 𝗵𝘃𝗧𝗏 goaded. Do you think I'm really that heartless that I'd put a student in danger and another in an emotional distress state just for some fun? Nizu accused. Yes, the answer came from not just 𝗵𝘃𝗧𝗏, but Aizawa, All Might, Midnight, Recovery Girl, and Present Mike, whom all were coming down the hallways to get Izuku. Wow, you all don't trust me at all, how rude. Nizu giggled. Although I didn't expect this whole outcome and problems. We'll have to deal with this for now, but our discussion with Midoriya will just have to wait. He finished. And pray tell why? Aizawa glared. Nizu simply opened the door all the way for them to see Izuku curled up on Hatsum with her hold him tightly against her, sleeping, and his tail wrapped around her shoulders with light snoring, showing that they were indeed sleeping without a care. Midnight cooed and was taking pictures talking about youth. Even though Izuku was a dog in this current condition, they all had to admit it was cute. Midnight decided to use a bit of her sleeping gas to ensure their sleepiness. And 𝗵𝘃𝗧𝗏 picked them both up and put them on a cot on other side of the room and carefully lifted Izuku up to cover May up and laid him back over top the covers in the spot he was. May adjusted herself and held Izuku more towards her chest, and Izuku placed his head upon the pillows. Midnight of course was going to so use this against the lad and took a picture with All Might asking for it for some dirt to use against Izuku. They've had a long day, and Izuku especially, so let's let them sleep a while and we'll figure out what to do later tonight. Nizu explained, and they all left them alone to sleep for a while. While they snuggled, if they would have stayed just a minute more, they would have heard May whisper in her sleep and Izuku's ear twitch at the words. My hero. Izuku started stirring from his sleep, the feeling of something stroking his head. He slowly opened his eyes, the blur of mashed colors becoming clearer as he opened his eyes more. His Vison focused and his head still upon May's bosom facing towards her. She gave him a bright smile, and she looked like she was sporting a small blush on her features. A sudden yawn came to him and closed his eyes as he stood up and arched his back in small. What a strange dream to have, waking up on top of May and being turned into a dog of all things. I should stop with the late snacks. Izuku thought to himself. He opened his eyes and at the same time he felt the ground below him shift. May started sitting up and he moved from her stomach to on her lap. He looked up at her and then was sudden realization. It wasn't a dream. He screamed to himself. He brought his tail around and it stretched till it was in front of his face and looked at it and let out a sigh, rubbed his face with hand like end of the tail. I can't believe I fell asleep on her. She probably thinks I'm a pervert now. It was comfortable though, and I can't think like that. Izuku shook his head, getting rid of the thought and becoming more awake. He went to back up when Mei started petting him. Mei had woken up and felt the weight of Izuku on her chest and smiled gently. She instinctively started pet him. She remembered her meltdown and how he brought her back from nearly giving up over this. Even when the world throws the entire lemon tree at him, he just makes enough lemonade for everyone, doesn't he? She thought to herself. She was suddenly self-conscious about how she just broke down in front of him though, and that they had slept together. Although she got over it quickly, it wasn't her to be embarrassed over small stuff like this. She saw him wake up and do a quick dog yawn and stretch. She sat up and he moved, and watched as he internally freaked out. Oh, look at him, always worrying about the small things. She smiled and saw him trying to back away. Oh no, you don't. She quickly started petting him to stop him. Are you trying to run away from little ol' me? Mei said, pouting, faking a sad tone. I see how it is you take advantage of a young crying girl, sleep with her and then run away. She put her other arm to her face, fake crying into it. So cruel. She stopped and moved her arm slightly to see his face. Priceless. Izuku, of course, as soon she started, mind started spiraling and missing the obvious sarcasm and fake emotions. Oh God, no, how do I explain I wasn't taking advantage of her, and we didn't even do anything. His thoughts coming out as weird grunts and noises while staring down. Mei, of course, was very amused. Oh, look at you go, you haven't changed at all, huh? Mei jovially cheered as she continued petting him. He stopped and looked up at her and they gave a small whine. I'm sorry, I couldn't resist, you so easy to tease, you know, she said to him, booping him on the nose. He gave small huff and looked down in exasperation. He really needed to get this whole confidence thing figured out. Well, aren't you two just adorable? They heard off to the side, their heads snapped over towards where voice came from. It was Midnight, who had her phone out and was rapidly tapping it. Izuku at first wanted to run but decided against it and instead just hopped away from Mei and onto the floor and then walked over to Midnight and sat down. Oh, look at you, if you were cute before you are even more so now. She cooed and she started petting him. He looked up at her and tilted his head. You are much softer than you'd think. Did your hair always feel this soft? She questions more to herself. Izuku nodded. Big mistake. Is that right? He could feel her smile become much more thirsty. I guess when we get you back to normal, I'll have to test it for myself. She gave him a wink. Would you keep your in check, you irrational woman? We got a crisis on our hands and you're worried about how soft the kid's hair is? Spoken by a rather annoyed Aizawa. Oh, hush, I'm just brightening the mood. For the most part. She spoke the last part towards Izuku with another wink. He backed up slightly afraid and ran into Mei. He decided to pick him up in her arms. Aizawa walked over to Izuku and Mei. So how long were we asleep? Mei asked. Only for couple hours, we just got over here to wake you two up, but you woke up as soon as we came in. Aizawa responded and then continued. We have pretty much got it sorted what the plan is. For now, Izuku, we're going to principal's office to get you caught up. Izuku nodded and Midnight took him from Mei, much to her dismay. It's only been a couple hours and I'm already going to miss my new furry friend. Mei patted Izuku on his head. He gave her hand a small lick. Well, guess I should get working on mind transfer, baby V2. She pumped her hands in the air. Now hold on there. Another voice came into the room. It was 𝗵𝘃𝗧𝗏. We still got to clean up most of this mess here, and then we are going to spend some time looking into some of this data we've compiled before we even try to get started on fix this thing up. He sternly said. We honestly haven't a clue how a Quirk even transferred over, or if was only partially transferred, or what. Transferring Quirk, who's ever heard of such a thing other than weird articles and sci-fi movies? 𝗵𝘃𝗧𝗏 muttered the last part out. Izuku had a small sweat drop. If he only knew, although it is strange how part of my Quirk at least transferred over since the dog didn't even have any of my DNA, he thought to himself. Enough dilly-dallying, we have things to cover, let's go. Aizawa rushed before anyone could say anything and walked out of the room. He's such a sourpuss. Midnight remarked. He is right though. Say goodbye, Midoriya. Might be a while before you see Mei again since you will both be rather busy. She spoke out. Izuku looked at Mei and let out a happy yip with a thumbs up from his tail. Right back at ya, Izuku. Mei gave a big toothy grin and her own thumbs up. Oh, first name basis, so juicy. Midnight amused as she turned around and walked out the door towards 𝗍𝗂's office. May watched as they left, just staring at the doorway for few moments, and her smile faltered for a second. I'm going to get him back to normal at any cost, she thought to herself as she started gathering more broken pieces. I know you want to get him back to normal, but remember this is rather sticky situation. 𝗵𝗃 started noticing her slight falter. But you also have to remember no one is to know about this, and so we're going to move this to another area that 𝗍𝗂 is having 𝗪𝗪𝗀 spilled. That, and you still must work on the hero student costumes, since if you pointing at her. One of our top supporters just stopped fixing them to work on this, it will draw attention and complaints. I'll be helping as well, and 𝗪𝗋 said he was going to call a friend to see if they could come help. Guess being #1 hero has his perks. Anyways, what I'm getting at is this isn't going to be fixed in next few days. This could take weeks or even months. I mean, it took 2 months for our first version after all. He finished. May just chirped back, Shh, just watch me, our bone-breaking friend will be to normally before you know it. She walked away from him, not showing that there was glint of sadness that Izuku may have to be like this for longer than expected. She continued to work through the debris. 𝗵𝗃 chuckled to himself and then thought to himself, that kid has got a heart of gold, I swear. I've been worried about May working too strong and repressing her darker thoughts and gets turned into a dog, and first thing he does is help her through her mental state. I'm rootin' for ya, kid. He started helping with the cleanup. Izuku was looking around as they walked to the principal's office, seeing if any of his classmates were about. He hoped they weren't. They were walking in silence, obviously not wanted to be talking about this in the public. Who knows who was around or listening. I mean, they have an invisible girl here, for God's sakes. After few minutes of walking, they were on the main part of campus and on the upper floor of UA. Izuku had only been to this top floor a few times, and only once he was in 𝗍𝗂's office, his fight with Bakugo. They were nearing the office when it opened and a student had stepped out. Said student was just a set of floating clothes, to the teachers at least. Said student looked up and saw Aizawa and Midnight, who was holding a puppy. Oh my God, a puppy! The student was Toru Hagakure, the said invisible girl. She ran over to Midnight and started petting the puppy. It's so cute and soft. Can I hold him? Can I? She was excitedly jumping around. Aizawa spoke sternly, we are actually in rush to 𝗍𝗂's office about said 𝗪𝗃, which Izuku slightly growled at the word 𝗪𝗃, but he was more preoccupied with another thought which had him very confused. Oh, okay, well maybe later then, ciao. She patted him a couple more times on head and then skipped away. At least the way clothes moved made it seem like she was skipping. She's such an energetic child. Midnight spoke. She's a headache, Aizawa mumbled. Neither noticed how Izuku was watching the dark-haired girl skip down the hallway and out of sight. His thoughts were, who was that? They sounded and acted like someone he knew, and the teachers knew them, but I don't know who they were. Maybe they were one of the other freshman classes. Or maybe even an upperclassman. He wasn't sure why this was bothering him so much. They all entered and Aizawa turned the lock on the door, and Midnight put Izuku on the desk, pulling him out of his thoughts, and he sat down off to the side. Well, Izuku, how are you feeling? 𝗍𝗂 asked, looking at him. Izuku used his tail to give a thumbs up. Good, at least doesn't seem like it's going to be an uncomfortable time for you then. I do have some bad news, however. 𝗍𝗂 stared at Izuku before continuing. 𝗪𝗋 says he has a friend, you've met him, David Shield. 𝗪𝗋 asked him for a favor to come help 𝗵𝗃 and May with getting the new machine set up. Izuku titled his head. How is that bad news? He thought. The bad news about it is, it's going to take a while before he can get here, and also before we can build new machine. We are relocating where it's going to be built. He took a moment to catch his breath. On top of that, before we can rebuild it, we are going to sort through the data, and then with that, May 𝗵𝗃 and us teachers need to keep up with everything being normal so we don't draw any attention to it. 𝗍𝗂 stopped for a moment to allow Deku to take in the information. With all this in mind, Midoriya, it may well be weeks or months before you have the chance to get back to normal. He finally dropped the bombshell. Oh no, I don't have time to just be sitting here for months. I need to train. The league's out there. 𝗪𝗋 is counting on me to be the next symbol. This can't be happening. How am I? Stop losing your mind, kid. His thoughts were interrupted by Aizawa. You train harder than any other kid in this school. Take this as a time to work your mind instead of your body. You work your body so much your mind can't keep up with what you want it to do. He kept going. You're top in your grades and your quirk is one of if that the most powerful in this school right now considering what you did to 𝗲𝗏𝗏. But that being said, the one thing we did manage to see before this whole incident was your mind had strong time keeping up with the quirk. He glared at 𝗧𝗵𝗃 who just tried make himself smaller. I've heard you telling some people in class that you were quirkless and that it didn't develop till right before you punched that 0-pointer during the test. He was about to continue. Wait, what? 𝗵𝗃 exclaimed, you took our test as a quirkless kid and then it came out when you saved that gravity girl. Oh my so much you with. 𝗵𝗃 was holding herself and squirming. From what we gather about that is he wasn't quite quirkless but the way his quirk worked it didn't show sign of there being one hence the whole toe joint thing being in his medical records. He pulled out a picture of Midoriya 10 months before the exam courtesy of 𝗲𝗏𝗍𝗏. This is what he looked like 10 months before our exam and then this is him the morning of. Picture of 𝗧𝗵𝗃 shirtless on top of pile of junk roaring over Dagoba Beach. Oh my 𝗵𝗃 her lips, seriously 𝗧𝗏 looked in amazement. This kid looked like went through hell to get this built. 𝗧𝗵𝗃 felt like he was shrinking and was whining. I didn't know he took that second picture, I'll get him back for this. 𝗧𝗵𝗃 felt a bit vengeful. 𝗲𝗏𝗍𝗏 was on the phone in a private office felt a shudder run down his spine. Why do I feel like something I did is going to come back to bit me in the butt? 𝗬𝗏𝗧𝗏 sorry I spaced out any dash he went back to talking on the phone. Where did you even get these pictures? 𝗵𝗃 questioned. 𝗲𝗏𝗍𝗏 provide these to me after 𝗧𝗵𝗃 started since he ran into 𝗲𝗏𝗍𝗏 few times during his training. 𝗵𝗃 responded. Actually, our furry friend here was the one who solely cleaned up that beach. It was his way of not only selflessly helping the community by cleaning the beach, pulling all those heavy things and having some people transport them to scrap yards and recycling as his way of training. He actually caught the eye of 𝗲𝗏𝗍𝗏 the first couple of days in which only pushed him further. 𝗵𝗃 half lied. He never wanted the credit for it since he didn't want to draw too much attention to himself, after all he was still quirkless then. 𝗲𝗏𝗍𝗏 took the first photo as way on thanking him showing that even pros can have little heroes. He leaned back in his chair to take a breather. And the second one. 𝗵𝗃 pressed, he actually was 𝗬𝗵𝗍𝗏 to see how far the kid had gotten before heading over here for the exams. Of course he was surprised about how he managed it all and he saw him up on that pile and was ecstatic and to the picture for remembering how someone can change with right amount of determination. 𝗵𝗃 smirked. In fact when he came in he was more excited than usual and said there was someone who he was really rootin' for here. At the time I didn't know it was little Midoriya. 𝗵𝗃 was just straight lying now and 𝗧𝗵𝗃 knew it. After all he knew about one for all and the transferring. Those were a long 10 months of hell. I should go back and check up on that beach. I wonder if anyone's been trying to trash it up again. 𝗧𝗵𝗃 reminisced he wouldn't have to check up after what was said next. I just went to that beach last weekend, such a appealing place. I heard it got cleaned up but to know it was one of our own students. 𝗵𝗃 was struggling to hold back, and she picked up 𝗧𝗵𝗃 and started his face and head and cuddling him to her chest. You are just so gosh darn amazing. How about after you get turned back to normal, we go on a date on said beach? Such a forbidden romance. 𝗵𝗃 teased. Need I remind you what you are doing at this moment is still technically illegal. 𝗵𝗃. He's underage, and your student, and you just 𝗧𝗏𝗏𝗍𝗏 assaulted him. 𝗧𝗏𝗏 chided her. 𝗧𝗵𝗃's world was spinning right now after all he was being smothered in by his sexy teacher after all. Thankfully he was dog and its emotional state was more stable, or he might have passed out. Oh phooey, just having some fun. Besides it's not wrong to give loving to a pup. After all when the girls get a hold of him and maybe even a few of the boys we can't tell them no because it's wrong, right? 𝗵𝗃 smirked. 𝗧𝗏𝗏 growled she was right. If she held back from acting like a normally person would around a puppy it would just be suspicious. Fine. But you know what's up and you can't date a student so at least hold back in private. Jeesh, he looked back to 𝗧𝗵𝗃. Back to my point I was trying to make, you have been training that body to keep up with not breaking your bones, but your mind was struggling to handle that same amount of power. I'd be careful but if you manage some alone time see if you can attempt surging some of that power and if so use these next few months to understand how it affects your mindset and when we get you back over may just be able to control it even better without even noticing it. 𝗧𝗏𝗏 added. That doesn't mean straining yourself. For the first time in months your body is going to be not hurting itself, and while Recovery Girl is using some cryogenics to keep your muscles from deteriorating while in its induced coma, when we manage to get your mind in your body, you will definitely have lost some mass and be quite stiff. He finished. Sorry kid, it's not going to be as simple as here's your body back. There's going to be some drawbacks, so you will probably be weaker by the time you do get it back. Midnight spoke apologetically. Izuku nuzzled her cheek, showing it was not her fault. She smiled at the action, cooing and rubbing her face back. As of right now, the cover story we are going with is this Midoriya. 𝗫𝗍 spoke. We spoke to the 𝗬𝗲𝗵𝗃𝗃 and told them what was going on. They agreed to help with our little fake mission by giving 𝗵𝗃𝗍𝗪 a fake stealth mission, sending her out of town for a while, and she would be with other members of the team every so often. The mission is a lengthy one, which is mostly stakeouts covering multiple bases around Japan. We can't afford to just jump in, so using you as small-time hero to avoid any recognition to get close, and also you can hold yourself should a battle arise while 𝗵𝗃𝗍𝗪 gathers info about the villains in those hideouts. Because the mission requires more stealth, it could take days or weeks to even get a hint at what we need, and you were also chosen since the 𝗬𝗲𝗵𝗃𝗃 took a liking to you after what you did for Quota. Izuku would have blushed if he could. This also going to help reinforce why your body won't be as buff as you were before, since it's strong to train when you have to be discreet and usually you eat when you can on these kind of missions. 𝗫𝗍 added on. 𝗵𝗃𝗍𝗪 and they have accepted this idea and will be taking jobs for next few weeks outside their normal places, a few weeks at a time to give credence, while they may be noticed in public you won't. He finished. Izuku gave it some thought and then looked up and using his tailed and pointed at himself. Sure, it explains why my body is missing, but what about me here? He questioned to himself. Yipping out loud. Yes, you however are a bit of an enigma, aren't you? We have decided you were found on one of Aizawa's raids last week when he was part of a break-in and capture everyone squad. 𝗫𝗍 started to explain. The place they were exploring was a lab of sorts, and they had been experimented with quirks and the likes with animals, and he found you. Then after a week of examinations and such, it was decided to allow the students here at UA to take care of you, was a way of integrating around people without needing to constantly monitor your actions or make sure someone wasn't abusing you. 𝗫𝗍 was about to finish when he remembered. Oh, and until they find a suitable place for you to live you are stay here, so it could be a few months. He finished. Izuku was just thinking how convenient it is. He leaves, there's a dog, some color as his hair, and then when he gets back the dog will be gone. No one's going to question that. Nope. So then, what's his name going to be then? Midnight questioned shift Izuku in her arms. Alright, he couldn't go by his name, that would be way to spot on. It's gonna be weird to be called some other name than Midoriya, Izuku, or even Deku. I let the students name him. Aizawa looked to Izuku with evil smirk. Sometimes I get the feeling he hates me. Izuku thought, cringing at the smirk. Then it's settled. 𝗫𝗍 hopped up out of his chair. Wait, what do we feed him? Can he eat regular food, or will we have to buy dog food? Midnight asked. Izuku started gagging at the thought of eating dog food. We'll have the students give him regular food, and if that causes an issue, I'm afraid you might have to eat the kibbles, young Midoriya. 𝗫𝗍 was side glances with a bit of mirth in his voice. Aizawa, you go on ahead and call the class to the main lobby and explain to them about Midoriya. Call us in when you are ready for us to introduce their new dorm mate. Oh, and don't forget to mention they should act as if Midoriya is still here to throw off anyone who might notice him out on his mission. 𝗫𝗍 then opened the door to allow Aizawa to walk out, which he grunted and swiftly left. He could always just stay with me, you know. Midnight picked Izuku up and wrapped him around her neck and shoulders, and he wrapped his tail around her arm to help keep balance. She kept her hand on his head, petting him. He was just so soft. I would rather avoid lawsuit against his mother if all this came out somehow, 𝗫𝗍 said, not turning around, and began walking out. Midnight huffed. Why did everyone think she would be doing something so risque? She was pro-hero, for heaven's sake. Izuku took pity on her and the side of her face. Oh, now look who's going beyond their comfort zone. Midnight smiled slyly. Izuku just yipped, since for some reason just someone now it going to be a natural thing. He only hoped that it wouldn't follow him when he got his body back. Anyways, off we go. She started to walk briskly to catch up with 𝗫𝗍. while 𝗵𝗃, and Izuku made their way to the Height Alliance building for Class 1A. Aizawa had gathered all the students to the lounge area. "What you think is going on, Ribbit?" 𝗬𝗧𝗍𝗍 asked, putting her finger on her chin. Beside her, her friend 𝗳𝗏𝗄𝗏 responded. "I sure hope it's nothing bad," looking around noticing Deku wasn't around. "Okay, good, you're all here, and rather timely as well," Aizawa drawled. "Actually, sir, Deku hasn't arrived yet," 𝗳𝗏𝗄 piped up. "I couldn't find him in his dorm or outside either," added Ida. "Perhaps he went out to the convenience store or is one of the gym's training areas?" He questioned, putting his hand under his chin, thinking. "Actually, that's one of the reasons I've called you all down here, is because of that little troublemaker." He glared at the class. What did that kid do now? They all thought. What, that Deku can't stay out of trouble for one day? The blonde explosive kid shouted. "Hey, now he doesn't get in that much trouble," 𝗳𝗏𝗄 shouted out, and everyone gave her a deadpanned look. She shrunk back into herself while Tsuyu patted her back. "He didn't do anything again, did he?" she thought to herself. "Fortunately, he spoke. Well, he is in trouble, but for once wasn't his fault," Aizawa thought to himself, and then continued. "He's not in trouble, but he won't be around the school for possibly up to a few months." Before he could continue, though, the class erupted into their own theories. "Oh gosh, I sure hope he didn't get severely hurt or anything." Momo spoke worriedly. "What happened to our dear friend Sai? Or does he need assistance? I would gladly dash." Ida starting going on about helping his friends while his arms swung up and down. "Haha, I bet he ran away, couldn't deal with the fact he could never be better than me," Bakugo yelled. "Maybe he decided he was tired of yo face." Mina chided. "What did you say to me, Pinky?" He turned to her, read to blow her to bits. "Was there a family emergency that took him?" Kirishima asked, ignoring the antics of his friends behind him. "Quite worried about Midoriya." "Oh no, please no, don't let anything bad happen to him again. He's always trying so strong and always seems to end up him being is something bad." 𝗳𝗏𝗄 was thinking. Little did she know how right she was. "Be quiet and let me explain." Aizawa glared, Reed and his cloth around his neck ready to strike. The students, aside from Bakugo, who just all swallowed their breaths. "He's been acquired for a top-secret mission by the Wild Pussycats. It was a sudden request and needed an immediate response, so he has already been sent out, and due to the secrecy of this mission he is to have no contact with his family, friends, or anyone in this school. So he doesn't have his phone," which he pulled out and showed them. "The only reason we are telling you is so you don't try to search for him or let anyone know that he is no longer in this school. You are to act like he's never left. All I know is this mission is stealth, lookout type, with him getting some experience in such missions, since he's not very known and has some strength, and the pussycats like him after him saving Koda. They need you guys to make sure the country/world still think that Izuku Midoriya Deku is still here in this school if he somehow gets spotted somewhere else. Are we clear?" Aizawa firmly stated at the end. "Yes, sir." Everyone but one person shouted. "How come that Deku gets to go on a mission like that? I'd be perfect. I'd kick all those villains hiding butts before they knew what hit 'em," Bakugo boasted. "The point of the mission is to scout out the enemies and their multiple locations before attacking, so we can surround them and get them all at once without chasing them down one by startling them with an attack on just one base at a time. You are a terrible fit because you're too loud and flashy and would never be able to sit still for hours waiting for anything to happen. Also, after your fiasco with being in cage during the sport festival, everyone will recognize you." Aizawa pointed to the explosive blonde. "This mission isn't a game. He is going deep into enemy territories and will spend most of his time mostly alone for hours and possibly dark and old abandoned places, just to hopefully get a glimpse of anything helpful. While this isn't as exciting as fighting, he's still going to be in very dangerous position since he's still only a year 1 student. Him getting caught will likely end his career before it begins." Aizawa spoke, remembering his underground hero work being almost like this all the time. Also, he added, just to make them squirm more. Should he get caught or someone gets wind, he isn't her, which gets him captured and he dies, or it goes public that we let this happen. You can all embrace your chances at heroes from here. Goodbye. Not because of him specifically, but the school will be shut down and your licenses revoked until you get at another school. He spoke with deadly tone while internally smirking. That should give him a nice scare. Izuku, who was still around Midnight's neck, and Nizu outside the door waiting for their cue to enter, thought to himself. Did he really have to try so strong to scare him, and why did every one of those scenarios just result in my death? He let a small sigh escape from his snout. Well, at least they bought the cover story. Midnight was sweat dropping at Aizawa's theatrics into scaring the little darlings. While the actual story he gave isn't the truth, the statement itself is in general. Remember it well, young man. Nizu spoke to Izuku. Back to the students, however, there was some conflicting emotions upon all the students. Some thankful he wasn't in trouble, others mad he gets the cool things. A few were quite sad their friend was going to be on such a dangerous mission, and one who was just devastated at the news. Sniffles could be heard, and class quieted down and noticed the Gravity Girl was trying her best to not cry. They all knew how she felt about their class cinnamon roll after all. What could they say? They didn't exactly know what part she was crying about. Thankfully, she would be telling them herself. Sura. She wiped her face with her sleeve, composing herself, ignoring the class staring at her. Oh, how come he couldn't even at least say goodbye or pack anything? He couldn't even say let his mother know he'd be gone for a while. It seems so cruel that he going on such a dangerous mission, yet if something were to happen, he didn't even have a chance to speak to anyone before she couldn't finish as she began sobbing. Tsuyu brought her into a hug and was trying to console her. Oh great, going 𝗧𝗵𝗲/teach. The three outside the door thought he himself was always berating himself. He'd completely forgotten the irrationality of the girl with a liking to the boy. Welp, got to own up to it now, I guess. He spoke calmly, stepping close to her and put a hand on her head, acting completely out of character for him. Listen, Uraraka. Sometimes this is how missions are, they spring up and they are more important than anything at the moment, and you have to leave your life behind to the betterment of the people you are trying to save. They needed him to leave ASAP, and sure, he probably did have at least time to come and find someone to say goodbye and get a good luck from, but at that moment he decided every minute could cost someone their life and hopped in their car and left. Aizawa was throwing some harsh truths at the class. Some looked a bit ashamed about being jealous about not getting a cool mission or that he was the one chosen. They knew who he was first and foremost, the hero Deku, and he would do anything to save any of them or anyone in a heartbeat. That's right, our bro is manly and he's gonna come back even better than before, so let's give all we got and welcome him back when he's finished. Kirishima pumped his fist in the air. Yeah. Everyone else did too, beside a few level-headed and one hot-headed student did. I know personally, though, that guy will come back even if it means hurting himself more. Todoroki spoke. While it sounded indifferent, his slight smile showed he meant it. After all, that is exactly what he did to break the ice that surrounded his heart literally. TSK, I know how annoying that guy is. No matter what you do or how you say it, he's gonna come crawling back anyways. Bakugo was remembering younger years dealing with the kid. Seriously, why did that nerd have to be so persistent? He thought. Wow, even Bakugo saying something semi-nice about him. You must be worried about him. 𝗧𝗵𝗃 sneered. At least they think she was sneering. I'm not worried about the nerd. Forget this, I am leaving. Bakugo turned to leave but was held back by Kirishima. Hey, there was something else he wanted to tell us, wasn't there? The hardened Quirk. Boy reminded him. I bet he's gonna be out there scooping up chicks and even getting on with them Catwoman. Yeah, I'm so jealous he's skipping school for months and isn't getting in trouble. He gets all the luck. Mineta and Kaminari both were sounding off in the back only to get slaps and earphone jacks into their ears. Their pain screams were ignored. That goof is going to give us all heart attacks someday, I swear. Still, secret mission sounds like he's rocking this hero thing strong. Pretty cool. Kyoka responded, giving Achiko a thumbs up. You're right, I shouldn't feel sad about this when he comes back. I'll let him know just how much of a hero he is to all of us. Achiko smiled widely. That's the spirit, come on, let's shout it out now for the hero Deku. Mina shouted. 1, 2, 3. Plus ultra, most the class shouted now in higher spirits, and Aizawa just grinned at their antics, knowing the mud out the door was probably in tears. Izuku was doing just that, using his tail to wipe his eyes. Those guys, I didn't realize that actually thought of me being a hero that much. Thank you, guys, thank you so much. Oh. Though I wish it was the truth so I wouldn't feel so freaking guilty. Izuku got over it quick, was filled with regret. Don't let get you, kid, just bask in the fact they little darlings believe in you wholly. After all, you kind of are on secret mission, no one can really find out about. Just, not quiet as dangerous, well at least the dying kind of dangerous. Midnight tone started to shift to playful towards the end. Why did she say that? What did she mean? Izuku was starting to freak out when he heard their cue. Well, that's the first bit of news to give you. And before this whole thing went down with Midoriya, there was something else that happened involving all of you. He now had their attention. You can all come in now. Aizawa turned to the door. Nizu and Midnight walked in with Izuku still on her shoulders. The class stared at them and then at the puppy around her neck. They were confused since they don't remember Midnight owning a dog and not one so green. Hello students, as you've heard we've got an assignment for you all, but before we could there was the situation with Midoriya. Nizu began. Funnily enough, we were going to give Midoriya the main responsibility here to help bolster his confidence, but you have to go with the flow sometimes. Oh ho ho. The principal paused for a moment. What responsibilities, sir? Momo spoke, tilting her head. Go on now, introduce yourself now. Midnight reached up and picked Izuku off her shoulders and set him on the ground, giving him a put on his backside to tell him to step to the front. Izuku looked back at her after the pat and gave her a half-lidded glare, which she just winked at, and so he turned and walked in front of Nizu and sat and looked up at his class. How does a dog introduce himself anyways? He questioned to himself. So he just let out a happy yelp and stuck out his tongue like a cute puppy would. Might as well go with the flow, as Nizu put it. Wait, it's the puppy you guys had earlier, Toru gleefully announced. Okay, who is she? I've never seen this girl in my class. Izuku had turned his head towards the shouting and saw a girl he'd never seen before. Her face was oval-shaped with semi-pointed chin, her eyes small and oval-shaped and were bright sky blue, her nose was small and hair was medium length and a very dark black, almost seemingly purple from shimmering in the light from how silky it looked. Her complexion was pale and just slightly pinkish to its tone, probably because, well, no light touching you means no tan. Her body was thin and had some muscles, and she had healthy-looking legs. All in all, she was a very appealing girl. So before he could finish his question, Jiro had turned to the girl in question. Oh, this was that pup you were talking about earlier, Toru? Kyoka asked. Yeah, I told you her was a cutie pie. Toru responded back. Oh, okay, great. Now for some reason I can see 𝗳𝗃𝗃. Wait, I can see her, which means her hero costume. No, Izuku didn't have time to think about it when Nizu moved on. This pup here was part of a rescue operation that the hero Eraserhead was part of last week, and extended his left arm towards their teacher. During a raid on an illegal quirk testing lab, he stumbled upon this pup and it took bit of a liking to him, and after doing some checkup and such it was discovered that he had at least one quirk implanted in him. The class all gasped at the fact that somehow a quirk was transferred. Well, all but one person who glanced down at the pup, whose appearance just him off for some reason. You see his tail, which if you give a demonstration please, pup? Izuku stretched his tail well over 10 feet and grabbed a cup off of one of the side tables and brought back over and handed it off to Ida, who was on the other side of the group. His tail pretty much acts like an extra limb for him, so he can do more things than a normal dog can. It seems he can stretch it to about 15 feet before it stops being able to grow and/or extend per se. The ends of his tail are split and act like a hand, allowing him to grab, and even has opposable thumbs. That's so unique, an animal with a quirk who would have 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗃. Achiko was amazing and then embarrassed about what she was about to say. Oh, I can see why you'd think that I seem more like a human who has mutation quirk than an animal with one. Nizu conveyed, not only is he capable of that, he does have cognitive thinking like us and rather intelligent and understands what we are talking about and convey emotions and know what we are feeling. I suspect him being an animal, he instinctively with his sixth sense, in other words, know how we can be feeling. Nizu was about to continue when he was interrupted. How do you know that dog is smart or know what we are thinking? It's just a dumb old mutt. Bakugo ranted. Izuku growled at Bakugo and then reached over with his tail, grabbed the cup he gave Ida, which was still half full of some contents. Bakugo wasn't even looking, leaning against the couch with eyes closed. He didn't even see what was about to happen. Izuku's dog confidence was ignoring the freaking out part of himself about what he was doing. The class looked on in amazement and horror about what was about to happen. The cup was above Bakugo's head and flipped it, and contents, which was soda, poured all over him. The blond boy's eyes snapped open and he jumped from his spot looking down at himself and looked up to see the dog had dropped the cup and tail was receding back to it. He saw the look on the dog's face, it was sneering at him, at the same time looking frightened beyond all hell. "You goddamn mud, I'm going to kill it, bring it over here so I can blow it to pieces." Bakugo was shouting profanities and other threats towards the dog. Kirishima stepped in front of him and grabbed and started pushing him back towards the dorms to clean up. "I'm going to take him back before he actually makes on his promise. Fill me in on the deets later, okay Ishido." The red spiky-haired boy said, "You got it bro," the pink girl responded, still getting over what just happened. The teachers all were proud and shocked at what happened. The very timid boy who would cower at a flea just dumped soda on most brash and explosive student they had without blinking. This is exactly the kind of confidence we need from him, they all thought. The students were more thinking about how the dog was still alive. Well, as he demonstrated, he understand being demoralized and also having a grudge. Midnight stated, although the smart part is up for debate, see as how he now made an enemy of the one person in this dorm who would actually kill him. She chided, staring right at Izuku who was looking at her, and then put his head down, embarrassingly letting out a small whine. "I'll say not the smartest move, but I'll give him props for doing it anyways. Besides, it's nice to see Bakugo get owned once in a while." Kyoka said, "Ha, right. Did you see his face, like he couldn't believe that would happen to him? I love the little guy already." Mina cheered. "So unbecoming this class, I swear." Ida spoke with small smile struggling to form on his neutral face. Anyways, Nizu brought everyone's attention back to him. "As you saw, he can keep up with conversation of sorts, although you'll be doing most the talking, but he's able to give you a response." Nizu ended. "Hey, wait a minute." Sato spoke, everyone turned to him. "Couldn't we just have 𝗳𝗄𝗧𝗏 translate for us? He speaks animal, doesn't he?" Everyone thought for a moment and then turned to the boy who was suddenly shivering from the attention. "Well, actually my quirk lets me control an animal's way of thinking and in turn the follow commands I give them. The more intelligent the creature, the strong it is to override their thoughts. As such, humans are considered animals, but I can't control them because of how complex their thoughts and egos are." The gentle giant finished. "Oh, well shucks, sorry for putting you on the spot there, bud." Sato apologized. "I also have a question," Zero spoke out. "You keep calling him Mr. Pup, doesn't he have a name?" The tape boy inquired. "You guys are going to give him a name?" Aizawa spoke up for the first time in a while. Izuku turned and looked at Aizawa, who looked like he was enjoying this. "Well, I say we name him 𝗬𝗄𝗵𝗃. Mina jumped out. Izuku started shaking his head vigorously. "You moron, they just said he understands us. Who the hell would want to be called that?" Kaminari annoyingly said to the pink hero. The class erupted into overlapping voices trying to outdo everyone with names. It's spiraling fast with the names at first going with his personality and looks to just random jargon. Green Boy, Fluffster, Tailhand, Explosive Douser, Smart Dog, Gerald, Muffin, Prince Reginald 12, Knife, Spot, All Pup. "Okay, that's enough." Ida put his foot down and his arms started robotically moving up and down. "We are UA students and should have more tact at deciding a name respectful enough for a creature as intelligent as this. You should be ashamed of yourselves." He berated everyone. Everyone did feel a little ashamed how out of hand they got considering some of the stupid names they came up with. "Oh, I suppose you're right," Momo sheepishly said. She didn't want anyone to know her cat's names along the lines of her Prince Reginald idea. "So how are we going to go about naming him then? It's kind of weird to be naming something has our level of intelligence. It's not like baby who doesn't understand ribbit." Tsuyu croaked. The class was all debating out this while one of them was just staring on the dog, who was sitting there waiting for his unfortunate name to befall him. His posture just letting it happen, his looks of green fur and emerald eyes glistening. It reminded her of someone. Then she saw it, his muzzle moving and muttering under its breath while she was sure just a bunch of yips. It reminded her of Deku so much. "Deku!" Achiko breathed out. The class stopped arguing and turned to face her, who was now walking towards the pup, and she knelt down in front of him, touched him with her pads, and she held on to the pup's front paws while he floated up. She stood back up, still holding him, and then spoke to him. "You remind me so much of one of our dear friends. He's off on mission, so it would have been really cute to compare you two." Both have this green color scheme and seem to even mutter, although you're much more confident than he is. 𝗳𝗃𝗁𝗃 giggled at the look he was giving her. She is so spot on, it's scary, Izuku thought. Don't you think that's just you, missing your little crush? Mina teasing the gravity girl. 𝗬𝗵𝗃 what you are talking about, I don't have a CR crew crush on Deku. 𝗳𝗃𝗁 wasn't fooling a soul with all her blushing. She almost let go of the pup. Chill girl, we all notice the looks you give him. Kyoka chimed in. What are they saying, Uraraka? Crush. Izuku's mind was haywire. He's just a friend, a really good friend. Right, Ida? She turned to her other friend who was giving her a lopsided sad smile, shrugging his shoulders sadly. Tissy? The brown-haired girl turned to her froggy friend. It's kind of strong to deny when most of the clothes you picked were green, including the underwear you bought that were identical to his hair color ribbit. Yup, the frog girl was still blunt as ever. Phew, why would you tell everyone that? 𝗳𝗃𝗁 was redder than a tomato. Everyone else giggled but was little bit ashamed to have heard a bit of her private life. Oh sweet youth, I think it's lovely to have a crush on a cute boy like Midoriya. Why, in fact, if you don't hurry your sweet little butt and pick him up, I think I might take a shot. She winked at 𝗳𝗃𝗁 and slightly at the pup. She pulled the pup close to her and away from the teacher, instinctively trying to protect it from midnight for some reason. She controlled her breathing and then let out a sigh. Okay, so I may have bit of a, she started. A huge, Mina shouted. A little crush on him. 𝗳𝗃𝗁 said. But why does it matter to you all? I told myself I would hide these feelings away until after I graduate. She calmed herself. Why though? Just ask him out when he gets back. Toru spoke. What the hell? Izuku's mind was sparking the gears where cranking and stalling. Uraraka has a crush on me. And everyone knew. How did I never notice? How someone like me who is always looking for every detail in everything missing something like this? It's like I'm one of those dense shonen protagonists. While Izuku's thoughts were going a mile a minute, 𝗳𝗃𝗁 continued. He doesn't have time for that, and neither do I. She spoke softly and put her hands together, releasing her quirk from the pup, and now just hold him in her arms and turned to face her classmates. You've seen the way he runs himself ragged. He trains 2, even 3 times strong than the rest of us. It is almost as if he sees himself so far behind that needs to push himself just to catch up. It's crazy to think someone with that much power feels so far behind. I watched him take down 𝗲𝗏 front row seat and all. She started petting Izuku, leaving her pinky up so he wouldn't float again. But he hasn't stopped training as strong. It's like he's going even farther than before, as if he's desperately trying to fill the gap all might left. She let out another sigh. Izuku gulped at that. It was a little close to home. Like spot on close to home girls are scary. It's part of the reason I started feeling that way towards him, his drive, his kindness, that willpower to do anything for what he stands for. I mean, look at Todoroki. If it wasn't for Izuku pushing him, letting him take the chance to use his fire, he'd probably still be only using his ice. She looked at the dual user. She's right, he wouldn't have lost that match if he just blasted me out when I was at my limit with the ice instead. He pushed me and made me recall the kind of hero I wanted to be, simple because I had more to use. It's strange how strong it was on him. It was as if he dealt with not having power before. Todoroki thought out loud. From what he's told me, that power of his couldn't be used until around the exam because of the backlash. I mean, so he probably spent most of his life quirkless, to say. Ida said, that's what he's said to me before too. 𝗳𝗃𝗁 responded. He wants to help people so much that he took our entrance exam as powerless person, and the first time he used his power was to save me while I was stuck under a rock. He had no points, and instead of using the time to get some, and sacrificed his arm and both his legs to use a power too powerful for him to control at the time just to save me. She smiled at the memory. I remember that day here. I thought he knew secret of that exam, and it was just Midoriya running to whoever needs help regardless of himself, although I wish he think about himself for a second to stop getting hurt. Ida was reminiscing. I actually tried to give some of my points away to help him, but I was told that there was no point, since they would never deny such heroic spirit over some measly points. She continued, where do you think me and him dating fit into that dynamic? She glared at her classmates, who began back up at the glare. We are trying to become heroes. This isn't a normal high school where romance is part of our lives. Sure, it would be nice to have someone like Deku to go on a D-date with. I've thought about it, but in the end even by some miracle we did date. She stopped to collect her thoughts. Izuku was watching her, his heart thumping loudly in his chest. A small part he kept hidden was growing. The part that really liked Uraraka Hachiko. What would we even do differently? We already study together and most of the time he's off training. Who am I to get in the way of that? And if he did stop training to be with me, all it would do is make me feel guilty. She looked down at the pup who was staring intently at her now. She saw his tail come up and pat her on the head, which she giggled at. So no, I won't tell him. Not yet. She looked back at the class with a hated gaze. Maybe something could happen if he asked me, but I'd probably turn him down. I do not want to be the one distracting him from where he is needed most. I believe Deku is going to become one of the world's greatest heroes, so I'm happy to just be able to watch him where I am. Perhaps once we graduate and we're all on way to become pros and he got that power under control, then maybe I'll act a little selfish. She started blushing a little bit at the end there. Wow, to think she's put that much thought into it. I could sense the sadness in her words though. No, not sadness, something else, almost deceit. Like somewhere she is lying about something. Still, to put her own feelings aside just so I can keep going, maybe she's right, but just maybe having her by my side would. Whoa, slow down, get back to human first, then let's talk about dating her. Wait, why not dating just Han? Oh boy, this is going to be a long few months. He was learning the real quick about the meaning a doggone day. Okay, enough useless chatter, although Uraraka, nice to know there's some rationality in that space-filled head of yours. Aizawa groaned. He wanted to take a nap. Just name the mutt and pick a primary caretaker so I can leave. He stated, where's your spark in life, you old grump? I happen to find it sweet. How could I possibly interfere with such passion? Midnight cooed. Excellent indeed, Miss Uraraka. I'm sure if the young lad was here, he'd be blushing a storm and probably trying not to pass out from finding out you like him and how much you're all praise him. Nizu smirked. Though I do agree with wrapping things up here if you would. He pushed. The class spent the next few moments muttering amongst themselves till Momo spoke up. We've decided, Uraraka, you will be the primary caretaker and you'll get to name him whether it be now or later. She spoke. I'm okay. Oh well. I was thinking, mumble. Her voice getting lower till no one could really hear her besides Jiro, who snorted, and everyone looked at her and then back to Hachiko. A little loud, please. Sito said. 𝗧𝗵𝗲. Hachiko squeaked out. The class all grinned slyly at the name. Of course, Shed picked that. Is that okay with you? Hachiko held the dog to her face, staring at it. Izuku took a moment, let the best smile he could manage as a dog, and yipped in her nose. It is settled then. Your name is now 𝗧𝗵𝗲. Welcome to Class 1A. Nizu spoke. Great. Now last thing. Aizawa looked at Hachiko. He's potty trained to use an actual toilet since he can open doors and unlock them. You don't have to worry about that. As for food, as far as we know normal food works, even those that are known to be bad for dogs like chocolate. Find out his favorites and give it to him. Or give him snacks, I don't care. He then turned to leave. He's your guy's problem now, although don't be surprised if we take him out every now and then for testing. He is a special case after all. Oh, and he'll be joining us in classes, so make sure to bring him, and try not to get attached. With that he left the dorms. Midnight went of and pet the pup in his head. See ya later, Deku-maru, she spoke sultry. Some of the boys jealous of the dog. Some girls disturbed why she spoke that way to a dog. One girl sends a glare to the back of the teacher for some reason. Well, before I leave, while Miss Uraraka is the primary caretaker of 𝗧𝗵𝗲, the rest of you should also take some time to care for him. Who knows how long he was trapped in that lab? I'm sure each of you could share upon him wisdoms of each of your lives and show him something new that you all have to offer. Nizu looked at 𝗧𝗵𝗲. I look forward your growth. Till then, have fun. He turned and left the building. Uraraka put the pup down and he turned, looked at her and yipped. The classes all smiled, for they now had a new companion. You just had to name him after Deku in some way, didn't you? Mina gleeful spoke up to Hachiko. Well, he seems to like it, and plus it would help with that whole keeping that Deku isn't gone, since we can use Deku's name and his still, kind of, here. Her face becoming even more flustered than before. I agree, such a brilliant plan, Uraraka. I am sure Midoriya would most certainly agree. Ida spouted. Izuku indeed yipped. Well, I guess that strong part is over. 𝗧𝗑𝗧 thought to himself as 𝗳𝗃𝗃 put 𝗧𝗑𝗃 back on the ground so everyone could have their turn to introduce themselves. 𝗳𝗃𝗃 had placed 𝗧𝗑𝗃 on the ground and the class began to gather around him. He sat down and began looking around. Well, I guess we should all introduce ourselves, so you'll know who we are talking about when we refer to each other. 𝗳𝗃𝗃 looked around. Is that all right? She questions. Great idea. Why don't you start us off? Primary caretaker 𝗳𝗍 gave her a gesture, put out his arm to tell her to begin. Oh, they're all going to introduce themselves even though I actually know them all. Great. 𝗧𝗑𝗃 thought to himself. Well, okay, my name is Uraraka 𝗳𝗃𝗃. My quirk is zero gravity, which allows me to negate all gravity on an object I touch with all my fingertips. Like I did with you earlier, when I touch all my fingertip together with each hand it cancels my quirk. My hero name is 𝗬𝗏𝗍. She finished putting her hand out and 𝗧𝗑𝗃 put his tail up and shook. My turn. 𝗳𝗃𝗃 was shoved out of the way rather rudely. My name is 𝗬𝗏𝗍 and quirk is acid. Pretty self-explanatory. I can use acid from any part of my body and can control how acidic it is. My hero name is 𝗵𝗃𝗃. She bent down, put her hand out for a paw which she put in her hand to shake. You're so adorable. She stood up and took couple steps back for the next person. Hello, fellow canine, I hope to become a good acquaintance of yours. My name is 𝗤𝗫𝗍, the class president. My quirk is engine. Turning his legs to let the pup get a look at his calf. It allows me to run very quick. My hero name was passed down from my brother and I wear it proudly, the great hero Ingenium. He was also swing his arm up down while speaking. He took a step forward and held out his hand, which 𝗧𝗑𝗃 took, and 𝗳𝗏 shook it rapidly several times before letting go. I suppose I'll go next. My name is 𝗔𝗨𝗃𝗀𝗆. My quirk is 𝗫𝗏𝗃𝗁. I use these, pointing to her elongated lobes, to send vibrations with my heartbeat to amplifiers to make bigger vibrations. My hero name is the hearing hero, 𝗫𝗏𝗃𝗁. She bent down and gave 𝗧𝗑𝗃 a pat on the head and he yipped back. She smiled and took her place back into the group. I am the brightest and most shimmering of all 𝗬𝗏𝗍𝗪. My quirk naval laser allows me to shine bright amongst others, and my hero name is Can't Stop Twinkling. He gave a wink to 𝗧𝗑𝗃 instead of a handshake. The name's 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗪𝗃𝗀. My quick is Sugar Rush. I use sugar as a source of power. Hero name is Sweet's hero, Sugarman. 𝗧𝗏 put his hand out for shake and 𝗧𝗑𝗃 complied. 𝗳𝗏𝗃𝗍𝗃. I used fire and ice. Hero name, 𝗳𝗏. 𝗳𝗏𝗃𝗃 simply said from the back, not bothering to move from his spot, and stared at 𝗧𝗑𝗃. Okay, Buskill, my turn. The name's Kaminari Denki. My quirk is electrification. I can shoot out electricity. My hero name is the stun gun hero, Charge Bolt. He walked forward and bent down for a handshake with 𝗧𝗑𝗃's paws. He went back into the group, pushing the nice kid out. Hey, my name's 𝗂𝗃𝗃𝗁. My quirk is Ani voice. It allows me to control animals and bugs to follow simple commands I give them. My hero name is the petting hero, 𝗫𝗓𝗏. He shyly spoke and 𝗧𝗑𝗃 patted his head with his tail, giving me a smile. My name is 𝗬𝗏𝗍𝗃𝗁. You can call me, never mind Ribbit. You can't talk. My quirk is, as you can see, frog. I can do most things a frog can do. My hero name is the rainy season hero, 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. Ribbit. She croaked out, staying still. Hey, my name's 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗏𝗃. My quirk is Pop Off. I can pull these ball off my head and they stick to everything but me. My hero name is the freshly picked hero, Grape Juice. With you around, girls are gonna flock to me now that the real Deku is out. 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗏 gave off a slight evil-like smile. 𝗧𝗑𝗃 back away from him and the girls all groaned. Cut that out, you perv. The name's 𝗬𝗏𝗍𝗪𝗏𝗏𝗏. My quirk is tape. I can shoot out sticky like tape from my elbows, and my hero name is the taping hero, cellophane. The darkness envelopes this one known as 𝗃𝗃𝗵𝗃. The dark force stirs within me and gives me the power of dark shadow. Who popped out for a second? What up, dog? Huh. Before 𝗃𝗃𝗵𝗃 forced him back down. He has a mind of his own. My hero name is the jet black hero, 𝗬𝗏𝗵𝗃. He said, slightly embarrassed about his quirk's stupid joke. 𝗧𝗑𝗃 extended his hand for a shake and Dark Shadow's arm came from 𝗃𝗃𝗵𝗃 and gave him one instead. I swear the turmoil inside will be my ruin. 𝗃𝗃𝗵𝗃 said mostly to himself. 𝗳𝗏𝗃𝗃𝗁𝗃 is the name. My quirk is tail. As you can see, my hero name is the martial arts hero, tailman. Ojiro said, extending his tail for shake. Izuku complied. 𝗵𝘃𝗁𝗍𝗔𝗂𝗐 at your service. My quirk is 𝗤𝗵𝗃𝗲. It allows me to make multiple body parts anywhere on my body. My hero, his is the tentacle hero, tentacle. He used his quirk making few arms to extend and pat Izuku's head. Hello there little one, my name is 𝗳𝗍𝗵𝗲, the class vice president. My quirk is creation, allowing me to make anything from my skin using lipids. The bigger the object, the more skin exposed to make it. I also need to know the chemical composition of said object. My hero name is the everything hero, 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗧. Momo bent forward in turn, making her cleavage very visible to our dog friend, who gulped, and some of the guys got a little jealous. She started petting him for several seconds, losing herself in his softness. Ahem, I think it's my turn, Momo. Toru said from behind Momo. Oh, ahem, apologies. Momo politely said, coughing into her a fist she made, and moved off to the side to allow their invisible friend through. It's okay, Yamamoto. Anyways, hiya pup, I saw you earlier. Anyways, my name is Hagakure Toru. As you can see, or not see, my quirk is invisibility. My hero name is the stealth hero, Invisible Girl. She gleeful announced, and she looked down at the pup and saw him staring into her eyes with his head titled. Why are you looking at me like that? Toru was confused. Maybe her being invisible threw him off. Good joke, Toru, you know he can't see anything. Jiro said, yeah, you're right, it felt like he was staring into my eyes though. She then took a couple steps to the right and watched as his eyes followed her eyes. For once she felt a bit unnerved about being stared at. Guys, I think he might be able to see me. Toru said, say what? Kamari looked at the floating set of clothes. What makes you think that, ribbit? So you said? It might sound strange to you, but when most people attempt to look at me, they either just look at my chest because of my shirts, or just above the neck part, my general direction, or if they assume where my face is, they either look at my forehead of the lower part of my face. If they do manage to look where my eyes are, it usually breaks sight after a second when their eyes focus on whatever's behind me. She said, still moving around as Izuku's eyes followed hers. So, you're saying he's looking into your eyes? Momo questioned. Exactly. He's keeping a lock on my line of sight. Even as I move around him in circle or quickest 𝗬𝗍𝗄𝗧, his eyes aren't dilating like a sudden shift of focusing on an object behind me. Maybe I'm just trying to be hopeful. Toru sounded a bit sad. Why don't you just ask him? Hey Deku, can you see our friend Toru here? Achiko questioned. Izuku looked to Achiko, then straight back to Toru, and then nodded. I can see her all right, and she's a lot more appealing than I thought. Ish, well, calm down there, horndog. No focus. Izuku, trying to focus back on topic at hand. The rest of the class gasped at that their invisible girl was actually visible to someone, but it had to be a dog of all things, so they couldn't even ask what she looked like. You can really? Toru's eyes began to water. This isn't a joke, is it? 'Cause if it is, it's no. She didn't get to finish when she felt something soft on her cheek. Izuku's tail was extended and had placed it open palm-like on her cheek. She stiffened. Okay, last test then. She took off her gloves and then took his tail off her. Using your tail to hold up the fingers, I am. She spoke a bit serious, getting down on her knees, have her hands in front of him. Izuku watched her hand go through various motions of random fingers, devil horns, peace sign, all 5 fingers, a wave motion through the fingers, and finally she put up all 10 fingers on each hand, and Izuku stood on his hind legs and put a paw on each of her hands. As if to prove he knew what she had done. Oh wow, that's so rockin', Jiro commented. Toru picked up Izuku and started squeezing the life out of him. He didn't let it bother him as he her cheek a few times. It's weird to be noticed finally after never being truly looked at. It's kind of embarrassing. Toru chuckled. Yeah, especially in your hero costume, you're going to be getting stared at by Deku? Mina snickered. The class chuckled at first, and it became alarmingly quiet for multiple reasons. Achiko became red in the face and then sent a small glare to Toru and Izuku. Mina, don't say it like that, you're making it weird, he's just a pup. Toru said, thought the tone of her voice defiantly showed she was embarrassed. Even so, I hope it doesn't distract you from training. After all, it's one thing to know no one can see you and another to actually be stared at, I suppose. Momo interjected. Oh, I wish I had those dog eyes. Mineta complained, and before Jiro could jab him, a green tail punched him in the gut. 𝗵𝗃𝗃 fell to the ground. Oh God, how am I going to deal with seeing her naked? It's not like I can just turn it off. Also, why can I even see her? I never could before. I need to protect these girls from 𝗵𝗃𝗃. I knew he was pervy, but knowing I can see Toru in a vulnerable state, first thought is he was to look at her. Nope. Not on my watch. Why am I getting protective? Another dog thing. Izuku's mind was racing. I love him already, Jiro commented, sneering at 𝗵𝗃𝗃, and Izuku blushed. If only they could see it. Before we forget, Momo interjected. The other two in this dorm you didn't get properly introduced to was Kirishima Ijiro, the red-headed spiky kid, and Bakugo Katsuki, the one you magnificently doused in soda. Momo finished. You know, he's gonna be more when he finds out the one who doused him is named Deku. Kaminari stated. Izuku was sweating bullets. Yup, never making back to my body, goodbye cruel world. Were Izuku's thoughts. Ha, you're right, we'll have to protect him from the mean old 𝗬𝗪𝗏. Toru said, still cuddling him. There's something I want to know before we go about on our own. Surprisingly was Todoroki who spoke. You mentioned before what you looked like. Does that mean you can see yourself? He said, talking to Toru. Well, no, I can't. Toru said with small smile. I have pictures of when before I got my quirk, and so I can only imagine what I look like now. It is a bit upsetting that the only one to be able to see me is Deku here, so I can't even really ask what I look like. She finished. Hey. Todoroki pointed at Deku. Toru's hair, what color is it? Closes to between us classmates. He said in a monotoned voice. Seems like it was trying to be bit more social since his close friend wasn't around anymore. Izuku got what he was doing. They were going to try to at least give her a sense of identity. Izuku hopped out of Toru's arms, looked up at her hair, then walked up to Momo, pulled her by the arm. Hey Wadash, she was stopped when she was next Jiro back to back. Izuku then took his tail and softly held Momo's and Jiro's hair together, almost intertwining. So, it's like almost midnight purple colored, Toru gasped out. Izuku yipped happily. What about her eyes? Mina was excited now. Everyone saw him look at her eyes and then do a thinking pose, looked around and then ran to the window, point up towards the clear sky. Clear blue sky colored eyes. Toru whispered to herself. Well, from your childhood pictures you should know what color your hair and eyes are, right? Jiro pointed out, well, before my full invisibility took place my hair and eyes constantly changed colors and shades. In fact, right before I went full invisible, I had bright neon orange hair and pure white eyes. So, with either assumed that what they were still or that it was still changing. But since he's not giving any indicators that it changed, what they are now is probably what it is, unless the change is slower than when I was a kid. She said, looking down at Deku. Right, my hair and eyes haven't changed at all, right? I mean, it would be constantly changing like one of the video game computers with the rainbow lights constantly fading in out of different colors. Izuku shook his head that the colors were in fact staying static. What about her facial features? Achiko asked, getting excited as well. Izuku pointed at Achiko's nose, to which everyone was finally getting into it, putting together a picture in their mind of their invisible girl. Okay, let's wrap it up with this. Give us her lips, complexion and body type in that order. Momo said. Izuku looked around, pointed at Momo's lips, then brought Jiro and Mina together to show she was pale with some pinkish tint. And then using wave of his tail down Mina's body to show her body type looked kind of like the pink girls. So what you're saying is our little invisible girl is as hot as me, Deku? Mina said with a snark tone. Izuku on impulse turned and yipped happily, nodding before his eyes snapped open and he froze. He looked up to see Mina blushing cutely, her face started turning lavender. Oh, such an honest response. Mina said. She looked down to see the dog looking like it was having breakdown in its mind. You know, you really do act cutely like Midori, you know that? Mina teased. Mina. Achiko jumped at that. What you mean by that? She demanded. Oh, don't worry, I ain't trying to steal your man or anything. Can't a girl admit a boy is cute or acts cute? I mean, every girl here was stolen glances at him during training. I mean, dem abs though. Mina got closer to Achiko with each word wagging her finger. Achiko looked around, seeing all the girls glancing away from her with small blushes on their faces. Yo, you all, are bunch of man-stealing pervs? she accused, them all staring. Calm down, 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏, it's not like they want you, they just got like guys do, it's okay they don't like you, it's impossible. 𝗳𝗏𝗃 doesn't actually like you, it's misunderstanding and girls don't even know you exist, it's gonna be okay dash. His thoughts interrupted by sobbing. Everyone turned to the sudden noise to see 𝗵𝗃 on the ground in fetal position crying his heart out. It's not fair, he has normal face, isn't tall, yet he's getting all the looks from the babes. He was straight up wailing now. What a pathetic pervert, everyone thought. Oh, so now he's your man, and 𝗔𝗨𝗧𝗛𝗍 chided. Here I thought he was free game since you're not doing anything with him. She was teasing, obviously joking. Obviously. Wah dash, suddenly feeling attacked. 𝗳𝗏𝗃 looked shocked. Now that you mention it, Mina strolled over to the 𝗵𝗃 girl. It's true, if he's still on the market for at least a few years, gives anyone the chance to snatch him up. She used her hips to bump 𝗳𝗏𝗃. 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏 is quiet charming. Ribbit. Tsuyu said, using his first name nonchalantly. Oh, you can't do that, none of you even like him like that. 𝗳𝗏𝗃's anger was starting to rise. Speak for yourself, but who knows, maybe after 3 years of doing nothing you'll actually lose interest and go for someone else. You and Bakugo have that weird rivalry thing, right? Toru said, you think that I would got after him? 𝗳𝗏𝗃 snarled. Anything could happen, even us liking the timid one in class. Momo spoke calmly. I mean even I-****. Momo stopped herself from say any more, slightly blushing, closing her eyes. 𝗳𝗏𝗃 was spiraling, she wanted to be mad, furious. Even, but how could she? If she wanted to wait, okay, but if another girl asked him, he'd probably say yes to avoid hurting their feelings. What if another girl grabbed his attention while she was avoiding him to stop her out dash? Wow, is his muttering contagious? 𝗔𝗨𝗧𝗏 thought while everyone was wondering the same thing, watching Uraraka's mentality break. This conversation was getting too much for 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏. The girls, for some reason, all from teasing to being semi-hostile while talking about him. The thought that maybe there was something deeper going on between 𝗳𝗏𝗃 and Bakugo. That didn't feel good to him, it made him sick, but why? I wonder if it's a subconscious thing. Earlier I had that feeling for Uraraka, but to have the person who saved me and the person who tormented me dating. I feel almost betrayed, by who I don't know. That's not important right now. The mood is dropping fast, I need to do something. Oh, I know, I'm puppy. I'll using myself as an excuse to move on. He put his plan into action. The mod had gone down fast, real fast. The thought of knowing what Toru looked like seemed to skip most people's minds now. The guys all felt like third wheels with all the girls talking about Deku like that. Thank God Bakugo was gone. The girls, however, all their minds were scattered between, were they just teasing or did they really think like that? If they did think of anyone like that, if another girl liked them, would they just sit back because of knowing their feelings? 𝗳𝗏𝗃's mind was raving in jealous and nervousness. Why was she acting like this? So you spoke up. Just so you know, one of the reasons I'm so blunt is during my first year in middle school I had a crush on a guy. One of my friends liked him too, and she told me she did. Even though I liked him too, I decided not to say anything. Ribbit, she croaked out. She was a shy girl and never said anything to him, and halfway through our second year she moved, so I decided to ask him then. When I confessed to him, he told me he did like me at one point, but because I kept avoiding him he moved on and was already crushing on someone else. She looked to 𝗳𝗏𝗃. This pretty much the same scenario. While I'm still rooting for you and I applaud your want to focus on heroism and not distract 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏. If I find I like him, I'm gonna go for it. She finished. 𝗳𝗏𝗃 was almost devastated. Her best friend here would take Deku from her to not be on the losing end of her own feelings. She was distraught. The anger from before started to rise back up. She would not have to act on it though. 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏 jumped out of Toru's arms with a loud bark, and instantly the grave tension atmosphere disappeared. 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏 started barking, turning to look everyone in the eyes one by one, growling, yipping, barking. His tail point amongst everyone in the group. In his head, however, what is wrong with you guys? All this over some hypotheticals? You should be ashamed. I am not worth fighting over. I'm just a dweeb who somehow came across an magnificent power. I don't even know if I deserve this, especially not now when my own classmates are fighting over me. How can call myself inspiring while listening to this argument? You all need to go calm down and think before you say something you regret. While he knew they couldn't understand him, he'd hope his barking would at least bring them back from saying things they couldn't take back. After all, one phrase, no matter how small it might seem at the time, can haunt you for a lifetime. He has many of those. Bark. Izuku's last bark was much more terrifying than his others. Everyone right then understood the point it was trying to put across. Don't say things you don't mean. Jealousy, anger, sadness, they amplified the thoughts you think, making you more aware of them, therefore more liking to say them. I can't believe the girls are being schooled by a dog. Kaminari laughed. The girls all realized it as well, and they were all chuckling now, the feelings and heat they were feeling before flowing away like a haze. I will admit it was looking a little dicey there for a moment. If I may, I wish to say a last thing to hopefully get our little Deku here thoughts across if they are correct with what I am thinking. Momo supplied. I once read in a romance novel that when you add negative emotions to what you are thinking, the ones you may have thought of before or that lay dormant in your subconscious spring forth. She took a breath before moving on. When that happens, you don't have time to filter the thoughts you wish to say and the thoughts that just feel natural to say at the time. Some say the things you say are the things you think. If that were true, then why do more often than not we regret them the second they come out? She paused and let everyone take in the words. The reason is this: while sometimes anger can bring out the emotions we are actually trying to subdue, and once we reach the breaking point, we let them out. On the other hand, we just don't want to be wrong. Our mind make the conclusions before we can correct it, says what it think it needs to say to win or get the other to back off. By then, however, the words we said have done their damage. You got what you wanted. But at what cost? Momo finished, looking down to the floor. Yip. Everyone looked up and see Deku smiling at them. Looks like that was the point he was trying to make. I am sorry everyone, I didn't mean to make things so awkward between us. Achiko started to sniffle. I almost lashed out just because of little teasing and some jealous what's wrong with me. I know for a fact that if Izuku had been here, he would be so disappointed in all of us for letting it get this out of hand. She put hand over her heart, it thumped painful so. Interesting. Everyone turned to Todoroki, who was looking at his left hand. All my life I felt my father being disappointed in me, but Izuku being disappointed in me makes me feel way worse. He was chuckling more and more to himself until there was unmistakable laughter coming from it. Everyone was thinking the same thing, that boy being disappointed in them felt worse than losing in the sports festival or failing a class. They all began laughing heartily, and some even crying from laughing so strong. That boy is something else, not only to be the one to cause this argument but to also resolve it without even being here, Shoji spoke. Guess we'll have to berate and thank him when he gets back, isn't that right, Deku? Siro said, looking to the pup, who just inquisitively looked at him. When I get back, I'm gonna have a hell of a time, aren't I? Izuku thought. Well then, let's wrap this up. I'm sure we all have things to do. Yurika, I'm leaving you to show Deku around the dorms and campus. Ida spoke sternly, his arms becoming robotic again. The classmates all went their separate ways, some stopping to pet Deku for a second and saying their goodbyes. They either went back to their rooms, or some plopped on the couch to watch TV, or went to the kitchen to dig for some food. Few of them left the dorms. Welp, that was interesting first meeting at Deku. Achiko looked down at the pup. Yip, he responded. Well, follow me and I'll show you dorms. This here is the lounge, as you can see. You can watch movies on the couch, or even hook up a game system to play. Sit on the side tables to side or watch whatever is outside with your tea. Of course, the kitchen is over there for food, and since you have a hand, I suppose we could stock some of your favorite snacks for when you want some. Chuckled at the thought of catching the pup red-handed eating someone else's food. Izuku was only half paying attention since, well, he knew all of this, but I suppose he couldn't get out of this. These stairs lead up to the second floor, and I'll show you whose dorm is whose. When we go up the stairs or elevators, the girls' rooms are all on the front end of the building and the boys on the backside. She pressed a button to allow for an elevator to come down. It arrived with a ding and they both stepped in, and she pressed a 2 button. After a couple of seconds the doors closed and their shift in the elevator hummed, and a ding sounded off as the door opened, showing 2 on the overhead lit sign. They stepped out. This is the second floor. There are no girls on this floor, thankfully. She said it for 2 reasons. 1, Mineta. 2, Deku. They turned rounded a corner and she spoke. This is Mineta's room, avoid at all cost. she said, and they hurried past it, and she paused for a second at Izuku's room but decided against saying anything and kept walking, which confused Izuku but followed anyways. This is Aoyama's room and that last one is Tokoyama's room. They were some of the students who left the dorms so they couldn't knock on their doors to show off their rooms. Let's head back to the elevator now. She round and start walking back to the elevator, and when she passed by Izuku's room she almost stopped but kept going only to stop when she heard Deku whining. She saw him pawing at Izuku's room. She sighed. I was just going to skip this room since he isn't here, but I guess I'll tell you. It seems like she wanted to avoid talking any more about him. This is Midoriya, Izuku's room. Wow, I haven't said his actual name out loud before, so sounds so weird coming from me. She shook her head. Anyways, he's not here, so you should. She heard the door creak open and her eyes opened wide as she saw the tail of the dog just causally open the door. You can't just open people's doors without knocking. Well, he wouldn't have responded anyways, but you can just do that. She exasperated. Izuku turned to look at her and she swears she saw a smirk when he dashed into the room. She chased after him into the room. You can't barge into people's rooms without their knowledge. It's not proper. Well, you're a dog but still bad dog. She berated. Izuku jumped onto his bed and looked around his room, ignoring the bad dog comment. It was gonna be weird not staying in here. He felt embarrassed having Achiko in here after all, first time being alone with a girl in his room, but Atlas it passed over quickly. I only saw this room once, but still, it's really cute to see how much of an all-might otaku Deku is. She giggled while walking around his room to the window looking out to the back courtyard of the building. A different view from her own since she always saw the front. We should leave, we're not supposed to be in here. Especially a girl on the boy's side. She took a few steps and stopped when she saw a book on his desk open. Izuku was about to walk out when he heard her footsteps stop and turned and saw she was standing still looking at something on his desk. What is she looking at? He walked over and jumped in the pulled-out chair next to Okiko and his eyes almost bulged out of his head. He forgot this was what he was working on before All Might called him down for the experiment. Is this a drawing of me? Achiko pondered, looking down at the page in the book. She flicked the page back to see it in bold letters at the top. Uraraka Achiko, Uravity. The page talked about her quirk, limits, additions to add her costume. There were a few pages of notes. She went back to the drawing. The details were splendid. She could see the amount of effort to make it realistic and accurate as possible with many erased marks. In order to get this much detail so accurate for not just my face by my whole body with multiple angles as well, he must have been paying very close attention to me. Her whole body flushed thinking of Deku staring at her face, chest and butt intensely. I know he's too much of timid guy, but I don't think he'd even know he was staring that strong just to get the right details. Knowing that didn't help but feel watched, and a bit good he was watching her. Izuku yipped at her. Can we please go? This is gonna kill me. He wanted out before she saw certain things. Yeah, we should go. It's rude to look through people's stuff without their permission after all. She was about close the book when her eyes landed on the note under the drawing. It read, I owe a lot to Uraraka. She may think I'm the one who saved her during our entrance exam. She forgets how she stopped me from falling before we even started. She tried to give me her points to keep me from failing, and she became my first true friend, a best friend I've had in a long time. Her heart is kind, her drive keeps me going. After over a decade of being tortured by Kacchan, I finally feel like I know what a friend I'm supposed to be. Although if she ever wanted to ditch me because of how useless I am, I wouldn't blame her. It would hurt though. Even if she did, she'd still be one of my heroes. Tears stained the notebook as she read this. What he means by torture and by who? He blocked it out by why? Not to be reminded of his past. Useless. Leave him. His hero. Her thoughts conflicting and couldn't focus on which to think about first. But she turned to see Izuku by the door ready to go. He wanted to leave. Badly. He never wanted anyone to read his notes. He saw her crying and thought she was thinking how disgusting it was to be drawn by him. Even if she liked him, that was creepy. Oh right, let's go. She closed the book and walked out the door, but she fully walked out and shut the door. She looked at the book, see the title Journal 15. Classmates. She had questions, a lot of them. What is Deku hiding from us under that thick hide of his? she thought as she and Deku moved out to finish the tour. The door to Ochiko's door flew open and the girl herself walked in tiredly and walked to the end of her bed and leapt into her bed face first. Izuku slowly followed in a bit shyly and then closed the door behind him. Face still in her pillows, Ochiko let out a groan. Today was exhausting and we didn't even have class today. A bit muffled into in the pillows. She turned her head to her alarm clock. It read 5:43 p.m. Wasn't even close to settling in time and she was done with today. Izuku wandered around taking a good look at Ochiko's room. It was plain like she was scraping by. He went up to her bed and was about to jump on it when he thought maybe she wouldn't like that. "You can come on up, boy." She saw his hesitation. He jumped up on the bed and went up next to her head and laid down. He was still getting used to walking around with 4 legs and after having to needlessly explore the dorms he was feeling bit tired. Some of the students showed off their rooms if they saw them, all the girls did, most the guys just gave a nod or there was no one in their rooms. "So Deku, what you think of your new room? I know it's bit bare but my family was never really well off 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗁, even though I could ask for more things or even get help from someone like Momo, this is just how I am frugal with all my money." She felt she needed to explain herself. "I know how you are, Uraraka." Izuku thought to himself. "Although I wish you be a little more selfish, you deserve so much more." Wanted to tell her. He looked at her and nuzzled against her. She responded by holding him close to her, rubbing her face in his fur. "I wish I could do this with Deku." He heard her say and he let out a confused yip. "Yeep," was her response, turning very red, a common color for her today. I meant our Deku, not you Dekumaru, although cuddling you is very comfy, I feel safe with you and warm." Not removing herself from him. "Calm down, calm down, calm down." Izuku was chanting a mantra in his head. Ochiko after a bit sat up, still holding Izuku in her arms, looked at the clock. 6:06. "Oh, while we were laying there for almost 20 minutes, time sure flies when you don't pay attention to it. Then again this whole day has been flying by," she said out loud. "Telling me I woke up a person today. Did an experiment. Got turned into a dog. Dealt with a crazy girl's self-doubt. Slept with her. My teacher hit on me. Not that's out of the ordinary with Miss Midnight. My real body is going to be frozen in a coma for probably months. I'm on a mysterious all endings end in my death mission. Found out my sort of crush has a crush on me. Dumped soda on Bakugo. Found out all the girls in my class are 𝗵𝗃𝗃 crazy. Saw them all almost tear each other apart, then laugh it off and then blame it on me. Re-explored this dorm room with Ochiko. She found out about my creepy journals. And now I'm in this bed with another girl for the second time today. And somehow, I'm not completely losing my SHT over it. This whole dog mentality is weird, like sometimes my feelings push through a barrier and other times it completely takes over. Like with people I just comes naturally and don't even feel embarrassed by it." Izuku didn't even realize that in the middle of his monologuing in his mind Ochiko had put him off to the side of the bed to stand up and that he was yipping under his breath. Yep, it was right to name him Deku. The girl smiled to herself. She left him there while she stretched a bit and reached for her phone, saw she had a text message from Mina. "Mina, hey girl, we're about to WHP up some dinner down here, wanna join?" "Me, sure, what's on the menu?" Mina, Sato says he's gonna make some steaks and burgers. "Me, sounds good." Mina, cool, I'll let Sato know, don't forget to bring the cutie pie 333 me, great thanks. I'm sure he'll love steaks, will be down in few, winky face. Mina didn't respond back, so she probably went back to gossiping and such. Ochiko looked back to Dekumaru to see him waiting on her. "Good news, boy. It's dinner time." She cheered, pumping her fist in the air. Izuku's stomach growled. Thank God all this CRP was making him hungry. He hopped down, went to the door and waited for Uraraka to follow. After a couple seconds he turned to look only to see her in a BR and her shirt on the floor. "Yip." He let out a rather loud yip that startled Ochiko, and as she turned around to face the pup and slapped his tail over his eyes and back up right into the door. "What's wrong with you?" she questioned. Izuku kept his eyes closed and then pointed to her. "Me? You mean changing my shirt? Well, aren't you a little gentleman, Dekumaru? It's fine, you're just a pup, nothing to be embarrassed about." Strong convincing him of that when after calling him Dekumaru her face tinged red a little. If you keep acting like that, you're gonna make it awkward, so I demand you look at me. Yup, strong to convince. Izuku gulped, removing to open his eyes. Listen, if you don't get over this weird embarrassment of yours, then I'll strip naked right now and we won't get dinner until you look at me understand? And naked. If I just keep this up a little longer, then /*slap**, and oh bad dog. Izuku slapped himself, shocking Ochako before he finally settled himself and slowly opened his eyes to see her in her bright pink beer. I can die happy, was his thought. There's nothing to worry about. Sheesh, are you sure you aren't really Deku in that head of yours? She turned back around to reach for the shirt she was to. A plain white one with the word t-shirt written on it. Okay, wow, how freaking dense am I that couldn't even notice that she was copying some of my style. I even saw her wearing that once and she was blushing up in storm and I thought she must be feeling unwell. Holy st, I am a dense shonen protagonist. He felt a wall break. He don't tell anyone, but this shirt isn't mine. She winked at 𝗬𝗪 before opening the door, walking out, leaving the dog to stand there for a moment perfectly still. She isn't just copying. She stole my shirt. But when he remember on one of his workouts at night he wore that shirt, and after particular set of workouts the shirt felt restrictive, so he took off his shirt. He forgot it when it started to rain, and he ran inside and went straight to the showers. The next day when he went out it was gone, so he just assumed it blew in the wind. This girl stole my shirt. Maybe she's not as a nose. Nope, don't do this to me, brain. Just let me think of her as innocent little 𝗬𝗧𝗔𝗊, please. He let the thought die in his head, turned and followed Ochako out the door and closed it on the way out. They made their way down to the lounge and the smell of meats filled the air. He couldn't help but drool. His nose was much more sensitive, and that fragrance was driving him mad. He needed food. No. He started walking a little faster ahead of 𝗬𝗧𝗔𝗊. Someone's hungry, Ochako sang, smiling while watching his tail wag. They arrived at the kitchen and saw Sato at the stove with several pans and plates around him. At the table Mina, Toru, Kirishima and Tokoyami all were sitting and talking while playing on their phones. It's the dog of the hour, Mina gleefully announced. She jumped up and ran over to the two of them, scooping Izuku into her arms, and returned to her seat next to Kirishima. I heard you stopped a pretty nasty argument, 𝗬𝗪. Kirishima said, stuttering a bit, having to call someone else Deku. He got a yip for a response. Well, introductions are in order. The name's Kirishima Ijiro. My quirk is hardening. I can make my body as harder than steel. The hero name is the sturdy hero, Red Riot. He his chest, and then proceeded to pet 𝗬𝗪. You sure that was necessary? I know he's smart, but did really need to know our quirks and hero names? Kirishima questioned. No, I didn't. With a canine's thought. Well, who knows, it's how we all did it since we just followed what Miss Caretaker did. Mina shrugged, nodding towards 𝗬𝗧𝗔𝗊. Well, since he's supposed to join us in class, I'd figured if had to refer to each other with hero names or based on quirks he'd know. She starts point her fingers together shyly. Well, whatever, this dog is manly to not only stop an pointless argument but also dump soda on Bakugo. Brave and stupid, can see why you'd named him after Deku. Kirishima remarked. I'm learning that the people here are all amazing, and Izuku noted. How was he after that, by the way? When I was showing him around the dorms earlier after passing by Bakugo's room, he still sounded pretty heated. Ochako said, remembering their small trip. Well, he's not happy for sure. Certainly won't be after finding you named him 𝗬𝗪. He was worried about Midoriya, you know. Kirishima said. Really? Worried about Midoriya? He hates that kid's guts, I swear. Mina said doubtfully. I mean, I wouldn't doubt it that much. I mean, he's always aware of Deku's progress. Maybe he's worried he's going to lose a rival, or that Deku's getting ahead of him in becoming a hero. Ochako said, then again, he's the only hero I know that screams die and kill you on a normal basis. The forces that swell in that boy are powerful. Tokoyami spoke. Yeah, he's got that mean streak, but he is a cool dude once you learn that he's a softie on the inside. Kirishima said, who the f is a softie? Was the yell they all heard, and they jumped to see the explosive man himself walk in. Dear God, thanks for letting me lay with two cute girls and see one in her BR, Izuku prayed, feeling his end coming. Hey bro, you are feeling okay now? Kirishima seemingly forgetting what he just said about Bakugo. Faye, I'll feel better once I skin that mutt, now hand him over. He stared dangerously at the little shivering ball of fur in Mina's arms. "No, he's our new cute pet and you can't have him." Mina was acting like a little kid. "I said give him to me." He reached out to grab Izuku out of Mina's arms when suddenly his arm was grabbed and began to float in midair, and then his world spun as he was effortlessly pinned to the ground. The kitchen and those who had just came into the lounge looked on silently as they witnessed Uraraka just take down 𝗵𝗃𝗃 with one move. "You leave Deku alone." Ochiko's demeanor was thought of a protective mother or a jealous wife or girlfriend. For a brief second 𝗵𝗃𝗃 felt fear. He got over it quickly. After the name registered. "What was that round face? Did you just call that Deku?" The tone his voice seems more murderous than before. He used his hands to flip himself, forgetting about the no gravity, used his explosions to launch himself up. Right into the ceiling, hitting his head. Due to the not gravity he didn't fall down, and so he grabbed his head. He screamed. Ochiko released her quirk, causing him to crash to the floor. Sorry, I really didn't mean for that to happen." She was scared, thinking he'd learn his lesson. She was wrong. He was waiting for this moment and launched at her quicker than anyone could react. They all went to grab him or pull Ochiko away, but none would make it in time. Ochiko closed her eyes, thinking next time she woke up it would be in the clinic. Nothing came, though she heard everyone get up and that 𝗵𝗃𝗃 was inches from her face. The sound of loud crack happened. She thought it was her face. She could feel everyone's breath hitch, then let out in relief sigh. So she slowly opened her eyes after not feeling any pain, only to hear a feral growl with 𝗵𝗃𝗃's fist mere centimeters from her nose. To everyone else, they couldn't really believe what they were seeing. One moment they were all trying to stop this fight and they thought Ochiko was on a one-way ticket to the nurse's office. But the pup that Mina had dropped on the table while jumping out of her seat to save Uraraka stopped it. It happened faster than they could blink. His tail was wrapped around 𝗵𝗃𝗃's wrist, holding it firmly in place. Dekumaru's face looked feral, teeth baring, showing his sharp fangs and canines. The normally smooth twisting fur was all bristled and looked almost prickly to the touch. His tail, when it lashed, almost flashed green. Lighting, the sound it made was that of WHP being snapped. He was growling hostility in his voice. Bark, back, bark, oof, bark. Now, the sounds coming from Dekumaru felt unnatural for everyone who had been with him today. But what they meant, he was telling 𝗵𝗃𝗃 to drop it or else. Ochiko took and stepped back, losing her balance and falling from the sheer shock that enveloped her. She was caught by Kirishima, who was right behind her, ready to take on the punch. "So you want to fight, 𝗳𝗃𝗃𝗃?" 𝗵𝗃𝗃 didn't show it, but the pressure from the tail was intense and it was about to break his wrist if it was any tighter. "Let go so I can kill you." He stared down at the dog, looking into its eyes, and saw the same dim eyes as Deku's. It was him. The hell off. "I will never let you hurt anyone anymore." Izuku's anger was flashing through him. He had no idea he could even get this angry. The tips of his bristled fur had lighting starting to dance between them. Everyone felt their hair stand on end as if lighting was about to strike. What the hell is going on here? Everyone but 𝗵𝗃𝗃 and Dekumaru heads snapped to see their teacher standing there. But was the intelligent response he got from everyone else. "I asked you a question." Aizawa demanded an answer. 𝗵𝗃𝗃 was trying to grab Dekumaru. Uraraka intervened and pinned him, and he tried to punch her in the face, and that was the result. Pointing to the still stalemated duo was Dark Shadow, who was floating above Tokoyami and was about to attack 𝗵𝗃𝗃. "Jesus kid, even as a dog you're giving me this much of a headache," Aizawa screamed in his head. "You two drop it now," he said. Neither let down their guard. "I said drop it or you both gonna be expelled and sent to the P&D, Aizawa threatened. Izuku let go of 𝗵𝗃𝗃's wrist, which was turning disgustingly purple. There was a good chance he broke it. After letting go, 𝗵𝗃𝗃 grabbed his wrist and glared at the dog, wanted to attack it, but the moment was gone. Izuku's tail slowly slid back to him and his fur settled back into its matted form and his features became soft, and he walked over to the side of the table where Kirishima had placed Ochiko in a chair. He began softly, her hands whimpering. "I'm okay, Deku, thanks to you." She started scratching him behind the ears. "I can't believe I stood up to him like that. Soon I saw she was about to get hurt. I felt it. One for all. It was surging through my body, not a lot, but I know I felt it." Izuku's mind was sort of hazy now that the adrenaline was gone. Bro, what the hell was that trying to attack a dog in 𝗳𝗃𝗁𝗃? Kirishima reprimanded. F off was the response he got from the hot-head hero. I would also like to know what the hell that was. Aizawa walked up to the explosive brat. TSK, everyone always protects Deku if it's just a dog version on him, is that right? Bakugo grumbled. Protect? You tried to attack him, and when 𝗳𝗃𝗁𝗃 stopped her you tried to kill her. What kind of shitty hero are you? Mina shouted. Not a pansy but one that needs protecting from 𝗵𝗃𝗃, that's the one. Bakugo went to make fish only for him to grunt in pain from his wrist. Well, it seems that 𝗵𝗃 was able to almost break your wrist, so Kirishima, take him to the nurse's office. I'll follow after I'm done here. Aizawa said. Yes sir. Come on you psycho, let's get you patched up. Kirishima got up from his spot, pushing Bakugo along, who was grumbling about not touching him, and they left the dorms. As for you, not even half a day and you causing these kinds of problems? Aizawa drawled on, walking up to the dog. Izuku whimpered. Hey, you can't blame Deku for that. Mina whined. That's right, the dark forces surrounding his fate caused this to happen. Tokoyami spoke out, withdrawing Dark Shadow back into himself. If it wasn't for him, Uraraka would have been paced on the floor. Sato offhandedly said, who had turned all the heat down when the fight started as to not burn anything, was now resuming cooking. Still, that quirk of his is a pretty powerful one. He could have broke his wrist simply grabbing it, and the fact Bakugo couldn't move should show you just how powerful this pup is. Aizawa stated. This is why we couldn't leave him with just anyone. He probably would have snapped someone else's bone in half if they weren't a hero. Also, that he needs to learn to use these powers, that's why he's gonna be with us during classes. Still, I don't condone quirk uses outside the heroics class. He glared at the dog. Isn't his tail a quirk though? Mina questioned. Aizawa gave her a glare and tucked her head down and let out small eep. I meant that lighting of his. If I hadn't intervened, Bakugo would have lost an arm. With that said, I'm going to go and punish that bomb for brains. He began walking away when he suddenly stopped. Oh, and 𝗳𝗃𝗁𝗃, you'll be spending next few days with Midnight for some after-class studies for also using your quirk. He smirked. Her groan was music to his ears. You should feel good though. He turned to look at them. I watched the whole thing. He smirked at everyone, shuddering at his response. For just a second he was scared. So feel proud you able to do that, Mama Bear. He then walked out of the dorm, leaving a red-faced girl. You know, I feel like he let that happen just to punish us instead of just stopping it before it happened. Izuku groaned in his head. He was startled when a plated was set next to him with a rare steak on it, and he looked up to see Sato give him a wink. Order up, he said. 𝗳𝗃𝗁𝗃 took bite and chewed it. It tasted heavenly. Sato began putting food on plates and setting them on the counter for the class to come get them. The class was talking amongst themselves, telling story of what just happened. Izuku could feel the class demeanor towards Bakugo shift. They all knew he was a jerk, but to be that self-absorbed to attack him and 𝗳𝗃𝗁𝗃. Maybe it was his sixth sense, but he could feel the animosity towards the explosive boy when he walked back through, and everyone stared at him huff and walked back to his room without grabbing a plate. Kirishima was going follow but decided he need to be alone, plus he wanted food. Bakugo stared at Deku for most his walk through and a second at 𝗳𝗃𝗁𝗃, who was glaring back harder than she had ever. The way she stared at him unnerved him. He didn't show it, but there was almost an underlying reason she was glaring at him, and it had nothing to do with what transpired. 𝗳𝗃𝗁𝗃 felt it too. There was something inherently uneasy about Bakugo now. She didn't know what it was. Her mind flashed back the journal in Deku's room. Maybe there was something in those journals of his. She would have to go back soon to see. She was snapped out of her thoughts when Mina started showing her videos on her phone. A bit of time had passed, and everyone had finished eating and was putting away their dishes and just chatting some about eating too much. Mina. It was Mina groaning. They all moved to the lounge area where someone was watching some anime, and finally someone looked at their phone for the time. Oh, it's 7:30, how about we all hit the bath? What you think, girls? Momo suggested. That sounds lovely. Today was a wreck. 𝗳𝗃𝗁𝗃 sighed out. Woo, bath time finally. Tur jumped. What are you, a kid? Jiro droned out. Isn't this how she always is though? Ribbit. Tsuyu pointed out. He, but it's no longer a normal bath time though, is it he? Mina was chuckling almost evilly. Everyone else wondered. 'Cause tonight we get a new bathing buddy. She whipped around and pulled 𝗬𝗂𝗧𝗏 of the chair he was watching the anime from, who wasn't even paying attention to the conversation. Because tonight we're also giving this little hero some service? She grinned. What? Izuku's mind was flying. He started to squirm. Nananonanonanonano, Mineta and Kaminari were on the couch cursing the dog for his luck. Mineta was bleeding from the eyes from sheer jealousy. Oh, sure, he probably does need one, probably been a while since he's had one. Achiko pondered, then remembered with a small dark smile. By the way, when I was changing shirts before dinner, he was awfully embarrassed to look at me. She said. Oh, is that so? Jiro thought aloud. Maybe we should let the boys take him then? She suggested. Little late for that suggestion though. Momo said. The rest of the girls looked, and Mina was already gone along with the set of floating clothes. They already kidnapped him, she said slyly. With Izuku, he was currently in the girls' changing room sitting on one of the benches in the back. Toru and Mina were on the other side getting undressed when the sound of the other girls entering came in. You girls were in too much of a rush and forgot your clothes here? Jiro said, throwing a couple of towels and some clothes from their rooms. Sorry, but this little guy was fighting us, and if I put him down anywhere else, I thought he'd run. He must hate baths. Mina thought out loud. Actually, he seems to understand morals and doesn't want to peep on us. Achiko said. Well then he's one lucky dog, ain't that right, Deku? Mina shouted that last part to get Deku's attention from around the corner and let out a whine. He heard shuffling and the girls moving into the bath. This was his chance. I gotta get out of here. This isn't good. One thing to see a girl in her underwear, at least they're covered. This is insane to not only see a girl naked but every girl in my class. This is Mineta's dream come true. I can't do this, okay? I'm just gonna make a break for it on count of 3. 1, 2, 3. He dashed around the corner and was instantly scooped up by a very naked Achiko and immediately closed his eyes. I figured you'd try to make an escape. She smirked at him. I'm going to die here, were his thoughts, and he was taken to a extremely steamy room seeing 5 other silhouettes beyond the mist. All giggling.